Good evening. Welcome everybody to the May 21st meeting of the Quincy Planning Board. At the beginning, I just want to note that the school committee, I believe, is giving awards upstairs. So if you're here for the school committee meeting, that's upstairs. This is the planning board meeting. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. The board requests that you please be courteous to the proceedings and turn off your cell phones. The planning board reserves the right to administer oaths, summon witnesses, call for the production of papers, cross-examine any person giving testimony during the proceedings, declare recess, limit debate, inspect the subject site or buildings during reasonable hours, and adjourn the hearing for cause. The order of business will be as announced by myself. All questions should be directed through the chair. Any person wishing to speak, please raise your hand for recognition from the chair. When recognized, please stand, state your name and address, your specific interest in the proceedings, and special credentials, if any, pertaining to the presentation. Please speak slowly and within the context of the hearing matter. The hearing is being stenographed and taped for the public record. The planning board reserves the right to exclude any unnecessary, irrelevant, repetitive, or harassing presentations. So to start, I'll take roll call.
Ali Shaughnessy, present.
I'm John Kelly, present.
Larry Liuzzo, present.
Kimberly Beelan, present.
Christopher Reed, present.
PJ Foley, present.
Okay, great. And then we have the meeting minutes, the minutes of April 16th, 2025.
Motion to accept those minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain from
Okay.
those ones.
Okay, perfect.
We're good.
All right, so the first items, we're actually going to take just a couple out of order. 18, 24, and 28 Old Colony Avenue, Planning Board Case Number 2025-06, and 38 Old Colony Avenue, Planning Board Case Number 2025-07.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, for the record, my name is Edward Fleming. I'm here on behalf of Cindy Zhu and David Lee, who are the managers of Wollaston Assets LLC. I'm also joined by Brian Donahue from Donahue Architects, who is the architect on this proposal, and Carlos Escolte from CEC, who is the civil engineer. As you know, this is a continuation from the March 19th hearing date. At that time, we made presentations of both these proposals before the board. The proposal for 18 to 24 and 28 Old Colony, which is a 30,768 square foot site, was for a large 94-unit, 6-story development, residential development, with garage parking under the building. A number of concerns were raised by the community and also by this board relative to the size of the proposal, the height, the number of units, and the traffic and parking impact. At that time, the proposal provided for one parking space per unit, and some concerns were expressed about that. And from those concerns, David and Cindy took those under consideration and immediately began talking with their professional team to make proposals to revise the proposal so that it fits more appropriately on the site. And those changes we'd like to present to you tonight for that proposal. We'd also like to discuss with you the 38 Old Colony proposal, which is also provided at that time with a 27-unit residential development with parking on the site with a ratio of 0.7 spaces per dwelling unit. In consideration of concerns that were raised at that meeting, David and Cindy have also made some substantial revisions to that proposal. So if I could concentrate first on the larger proposal that's before you on the boards. The proposal, as I mentioned, was a 6-story building that consisted of 94 dwelling units. Concerns were raised about the overall height. Although the overall height actually complies with the Business C zoning requirements, its character felt a little large, and I think the board made some comments and concerns about that. So David and Cindy have revised the plans from a 6-story building now to a 5-story building. But the bigger change to this proposal went from 94 dwelling units to 62. The building was initially proposed as an apartment building for rental units. And because of the changes that were made to the plans, unit sizes were changed, and the 62 units now will provide for 62 condominium dwelling units. So they'll be for sale rather than for rent. The bedroom count was 54 two-bedrooms and 8 one-bedrooms in that particular location, which was similar to what was provided, but these units actually now provide for more space within the 5-unit structure. The proposal will continue to provide for a garage parking under the building for 98 vehicles. So what that did, and because of the change in the number of units, the parking ratio went from 1 space per unit to now 1.58 spaces per unit. And as you may know, in the Business C category, zoning category, 1.5 spaces is required in Business C. So we actually exceed the parking requirement of the zoning ordinance at 1.58. We're hopeful that those changes, which we consider to be pretty significant, but didn't affect the character or the design of the building, will have a dramatic impact on the impact this proposal may have on the community. Folks raise concerns about parking, they raise concerns about the height, but they also raise concerns about the traffic impact of 94 units. And now at 62, it will be significantly less. The second building that we're discussing tonight, and again, and I'll have, and Brian Donahue will go through these plans in more detail. I just want to kind of provide an overview and a highlight. The second building at 38 Old Colony, as I indicated, was a 27-unit apartment building, and it was proposed at the time as an affordable affordable building. That affordable building was hoped by both David and Cindy that they could utilize that building to satisfy their requirements for affordable housing. But because of the concerns that were raised and the number counts needed to change, that building has now been changed to a market rate building. And it's also gone from apartments to condominiums. So it was 27 initially, 27 apartments to now 19 condominium units. The 19 parking spaces remain on the site, so there'll continue to be 19 parking spaces under the building. So that will provide a parking ratio of one for one space per unit. We think in a transit-oriented location of this nature, and the fact that there'll be condominiums and the parking will be assigned to those condominium units, that parking ratio will satisfy the needs of that particular building. In addition to that, there were some other minor modifications made. There was a trash room added to the facility. Initially, there was a dumpster location within the parking lot itself that we felt wasn't necessarily needed with the change in the number of units, and now a trash room will allow the management of trash pickup from the site. So with that, I'd like to, if I may, introduce Brian Donahue and have Brian Donahue just kind of walk through these revisions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Brian Donahue, Donahue Architects here in Quincy. I'll start reviewing the revisions to 1828 Old Colony, which is the larger building. As Ed mentioned, we've gone from 94 units to 62. And we accomplished this by basically taking a floor off the building, deleting about 15,000 square feet of living space and deck. And now we present from the road Old Colony as a 5-story building, knowing that we have a double deck of parking at the street level and then one below, if you remember from the original proposal. I won't go through context anymore. This shows the building as it sits on the site. Now, the footprint is nearly exactly the same. When we took a story off, we did extend the eastern wing, which is the one that is off at a diagonal, by 9 feet. So we Before, we had 5 guest spaces out front, now we have 4. We didn't lose any parking. As a matter of fact, we gained a space by doing that because the lower level expanded, so we picked up a space down there. So we're at 98 spaces for the 62 units. These are just typical floor plan layouts showing the 1s and 2s and how the building sits on the site. Building elevations show that we've lowered the height of the building by 10 feet and 12 feet in some areas. In the rear of the building, where it's 6 stories actually, it's gone from 64 feet to 52. So it's a significant lowering and massing, even though that the footprint of the building hasn't changed. In terms of the architecture, there's some minor tweaking of building materials and facade treatments. We had bump out bays that were coming into that 10-foot setback. We brought them in to the building line, so the building isn't protruding into that 10-foot setback. Materials are similar to what they were before, more of a brick base to ground the building, and then a combination of composite panels and clapboard siding at different exposures. Section through the building shows the 2 parking. The shadow studies have been revised based on the lowering of the building as well. 3-dimensional depictions of the building. The lower right shows the building from the right-of-way. Originally, we had 5 bump outs there, bay windows. We removed those and pulled that back in. We still have the same concept of the garden landscaped area above the lobby. More views and material descriptions on buildings. So that's pretty much in a nutshell of what has changed for the 18 to 28 building. You want me to go through to the next? Yeah, okay. Well, civil drawings, I'm not sure, Carlos is gonna speak. Okay, so the smaller building, there's only 3 minor changes to that. Obviously, the biggest one is going from 27 units down to 19 units. And as Ed mentioned, we have 19 parking spaces. We gained a space because we took the dumpster out, which was occupying a space, and put a trash room in the lower level. I'll pull up the plans. So the footprint really hasn't changed on this. It's still the same floor area, the same configuration, the same height. Minor material changes on the outside. But as you can see, we've got, you can see on the lower level plan on the left there, we've added a trash room in the back of the garage with bins to pull out for weekly or bi-weekly pickup. And as I mentioned, the footprint of the building has not changed. So those are basically a nutshell version of what we've revised these 2 projects for. Happy to answer any questions about the architecture.
Can I just ask a quick question, Brian? On the left-hand corner there, that's your basement. Then you have the trash on the bottom left. Is that what that is?
Bottom right, across from the stair.
Across from the stair.
Yeah. So folks would have to bring their trash down and put it in those
Yeah.
bins.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
And
Okay.
then those would be wheeled out for,
So in that is that Pitts Ave on the right-hand side there?
yes.
So when the dumpster gets emptied, the truck is going to get perpendicular to the building going out into
Yeah, they
Pitts
can
Ave?
certainly make a turn in the parking area and reposition themselves to pull out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if Carlos Wilkie, just kind
Sure.
of for a quick update on
Yeah.
we were able to provide revised civil plans regarding the larger building, but we held off on the smaller building, so we can have a meeting with DPW. Carlos?
Okay, great, thank you.
Good evening, Carlos Scotti with Civil and Environmental Consultants, civil engineers on this project. The plans you'll see look very similar to the previous iteration, essentially updated to reflect some of the articulation in the building based on the updated architecture for both sites. As Ed mentioned earlier, we were asked to work with the city, with Department of Public Works and the city's consultants to essentially talk about the Wollaston area flooding. As you're well aware, there was a flood inundation study done a few years ago about what's happening in this area. We did respond to the peer reviewers' comments, but there wasn't as much of a focus as maybe I think the city would like to see with the relationship to that flood inundation study. So we're working with the city's consultants and the Department of Public Works to essentially schedule a meeting and talk about what these projects can do and how development in the Wollaston area will work as it relates to that study that was done there. So while we've addressed the peer reviewers' comments and we believe we've addressed DPW comments, it's just part of the larger conversation of how these developments and other ones fit within that flood area. So that's a meeting that we're trying to work with the Department of Public Works, Planning, and the city's consultant just to close the loop on that. So that being said, we did address the comments that were made by the peer reviewer as part of the review that they provided. We provided responses. There were some small changes to articulation, layout, some of the stormwater storage for the larger project. Ultimately, we held back on resubmitting the smaller one that abuts on Pitts Avenue in order to have these conversations so that we could resubmit just one final plan that addressed any comments that came out of that process. So we anticipate that conversation will ongoing. We're working to try and have that in the next week or so. And hopefully at that point, we'll be able to resubmit any changes, modifications that might be needed to address that and move forward. For context, both of these projects were holding all of the stormwater from the 2-year storm event. So there was essentially zero discharge coming from the site, which exceeded the stormwater standards that the city currently has, citywide, as well as Massachusetts stormwater standards. Just reviewing if that's going to be something that's consistent with what the city's going to be looking for in the future for other projects in the area. So again, we believe we've met the standard. We just want to have that conversation, close the loop, and make sure that everybody's on the same page before taking a final action on that one. And then as it relates to the parking and the relationship to the updated parking, one thing that we did include in the responsive comments with the larger project that you have in your packet was just an analysis based on Institute for Transportation Engineers on mid-rise developments such as this one close to transit facilities. And it identified, based on a fairly large sample size of representative projects, that the average parking demand for this development is 43 parking spaces for the 62 units when you're looking at a units count, or a maximum of 78 if you're looking at the 85th percentile. So 85% of projects would require less than that. And if you're looking at the bedroom count, you get similar numbers where it's between 49 on average and then 72 in the 85th percentile. So any way you look at it, this one providing 98 spaces exceeds all the metrics and the backup the Institute for Transportation Engineers provides for developments like this. So just a little additional backup provided in support of the parking relationship to the number of units that we have for this one. So that was provided, as well as some additional backup as it relates to turning templates and some minor modifications along the frontage. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ed.
Thank you, Carlos. And just to highlight Carlos's comments about parking, that ITE analysis actually really supports a transit-oriented nature of this whole development, both the larger building and the smaller building, that these parking numbers really are much more in line with what the ITE believes is necessary parking here. Furthermore, this proposal, this location of this proposal is actually within the Wollaston Urban Redevelopment District as well. So although we've been working with the Business C requirements, the urban redevelopment, or the Wollaston Urban Redevelopment standards this is in much more compliance even with them. And that district isn't in place yet because it's going through the MEPA filing that Mr. Stevens is working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Attorney Fleming. Let me see if anybody has questions.
Madam
yeah.
Chair, I
Member
have just a few
Miller?
questions. So these are going to be condominiums.
Yes.
And up on the roof, we're going to be putting all the condensing units up on the roof?
Yes.
Is that's where they're going? And what about the perimeter lighting? I know you got a lot of parking space. I didn't see much about the perimeter lighting on there anywhere.
So we did provide a updated photometrics plan. A lot of the building lighting, because it is relatively close to the street and to the property lines, would be building mounted lighting. And then there's some bollard accented lighting near the entry as you're coming in. So Nothing on the backside or the sides because we're preventing the light spillage. That was one of the comments that came up. So we did provide an updated photometrics plan that shows that we have the 0-foot candles at the property line, so we're not spilling over into the street.
Just food for thought. I mean, I know you have streetlights out there, but it's a long building. I mean, you got some grass there. People may walk dogs there, may not. I mean, you may want to think about putting some lights along that back there.
Yeah, we could consider maybe something low, or maybe even some guideway lighting.
You know,
like
some
taller
bollards
front
lights
lighting.
down on.
Yep.
But, and then,
We currently do not, no.
has the owner decided on a developer yet? Do we have a contractor that's?
No, not at this stage. They haven't.
Well, like I say to all the developers in the city of Quincy, how you doing tonight? John Kelly. The men and women of the city of Quincy would love to work on a project. Work is getting slow out in the construction industry, so if you can keep the people in the city of Quincy working on a project in Quincy, that'd be very, very helpful to the people that live here and pay taxes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have,
Any
Madam Chair.
questions? No? Any questions? No? Oh,
Question
sorry,
for you.
yes.
Attorney Fleming, fine, Mike, I think we're going in the right direction with the 1824 Old Colony Ave. My question is related specifically to the 38 Old Colony. So we're going from 27 affordable units
Right.
to down to 19 condos?
Condominiums.
Okay, what's the philosophy? Because, the March meeting, I think we sat up here praising that project.
I know.
Saying, affordable housing is desperately needed and welcomed, and especially in this area, and not that condominiums aren't, don't get me wrong, but why the switch? And what's the philosophy behind that?
I think there were a couple of factors in that. One, the numbers obviously impacted the financial ability to build an affordable building. The second thing that came about too, and this is probably more my fault in explaining it to David and Cindy, is that they were hopeful that these buildings would qualify their requirement for affordable housing. But I explained to them that apartments and condominiums are treated in different bags when it comes to affordable housing. And because of that, this building would not have satisfied their requirements for other buildings that they're developing in the city. So for example, they're building a 21-unit development over on South Street. Near the shipyard. And they have affordable housing requirement in that particular building for 2 units. And they anticipated that they'd be able to satisfy those 2 units here at this 38 Old Colony, but I explained to them that they would not qualify because they're apartments in the units that they're dealing with on South Street are condominiums. So because of that factor and because of the financial aspects of the development, the numbers just didn't work.
Okay.
So that's what led to the change.
Okay, I'm just thinking about the, current tenants who were told,
I know.
first option, yeah. It just,
Yeah, David.
yeah, no,
right up.
I'm sure there's a plan. I'm just more out of curiosity.
Yeah. If I may, first of all, thank you all for your time tonight. So my name is David Lee. I'm one of the applicants for these projects here at Old Colony. So if I may, I'd just like to kind of talk through the logic of how we designed these projects and how we kind of came to the initial conclusion of the 94-unit building as well as the affordable building. So when we acquired these properties, it was our understanding that the Wollaston Urban Revitalization District would be put in place, and so we approached it with the thought of how is Quincy Center's overlay district being developed, right? And so that's how we kind of came up with the 94 units, just using the math for square footage per dwelling unit. And it was always our hope to have an alternative for our current tenants. We have 18 current tenants. And so we started with, doing the math on getting a 94-unit building, trying to provide as much parking as we could. And we backed into the parking ratio that we had now, and we tried to apply it to the affordable building. So we have 18 tenants. We have the usage is 0.7 parking, and so we devised just the mathematics showed 27 units and 19 parking would work for the current usage that we're seeing now, and so the thought was always that we would fund this, and that was always tight, and we weren't going to ask for any subsidies from the Affordable Trust or any other mediums. And so that was always tight, but it was something we really wanted to do, especially for some of these tenants who have been with us for 20, 30 years, and we're still talking to them. We're trying to figure something out where we could help them get placed. But without any kind of subsidy, it just doesn't work. I think any of our fellow developers would acknowledge that we just can't do affordable buildings out of our own pocket. And the reason for us to do that, biggest motivation was really to house the tenants. And secondly was the financial incentive was to apply, as Ed mentioned, to our other projects. And quite frankly, we wanted to show our commitment to Quincy. If we did 27 affordable building units, it would say that we have to build 270 other market rate buildings to even use those credits. And that was our way of saying, hey, we're here to stay. So it was a lot of messages that we were trying to convey. The biggest one was really the existing tenants. But because of this significant reduction, I think reality sets in. It's undoable. It wasn't necessarily doable before, but it was something that, it was a softer landing. And I think kind of with 62 and not having any credit towards that building, it would be, it would be financially impossible without, being significantly in the red. So I just wanted to explain that. I think what the lesson learned is we need to have a more intimate dialogue with the planning department, perhaps the mayor's office, perhaps other city officials on how we can help provide. And it's not to say that we don't want to do this in the future. We absolutely want to be part of not just the growth, but also providing affordable housing. But it's just, I think the dialogue needs to be more intimate where we can, and we're willing to continue to consider funding it ourselves. We're pretty good project managers. We're not great with the bureaucracies of getting through sort of subsidized funding. So we move pretty quickly. When we get a permit, we will move very quickly, as I think we've demonstrated in our past projects. So for us, it's really more about being efficient rather than kind of getting every last dollar. And so we would be willing to do that in the future, but it just has to work at some level. And in this case, if we were to kind of move forward with the 62-unit project, and I think we're reducing the South Street project that Ed was referring to 18 units, and we did an affordable building without the credits, I mean, we just can't fund it. So that's kind of the background. I wanted to at least explain it, because I know, Ms. Lizzo, you were very excited about it, and we were too. We were very happy to have the opportunity to provide that housing for the existing tenants. But as I said, we want to continue to kind of consider how we can contribute to that cause. But in this case, it's just not doable, quite frankly.
Okay. On the same project, so it's down to 19 units. Is it still going to be 18 parking spaces? Or
19.
19. Okay. What's the bedroom breakdown for that building?
So currently, it's looking like 2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms.
Yeah, because we reduced the number, the unit count, but we kept the same amount of floors. Yeah.
And I would imagine you're going to handle permit parking. I don't know how, like one parking permit per condo.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there'll be assigned parking,
Right.
and I think one of the neighbors mentioned that we're creating the density that our tenants should not be eligible for permitted parking on the street, and I think we would agree to that. I think we should put that into the bylaws. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, the whole idea of this is urban development, so they should be using public transit, and we're going to be providing an on-grade bike room, right? So it's going to be in and out, very, very convenient, and hopefully that just encourages fewer cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, yes, but
It works in Boston at
reality
least.
is another.
It definitely works in Boston.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't have any, just one point, I guess. There is an affordable housing component still to this, just under the bylaw.
There is.
Yes, yeah, and so what's the unit number, just to?
So there'll be 6 provided for the large building, and there's 2 provided for the smaller building as well.
Okay.
And we'll discuss with the Affordable Housing Trust Committee, the manner in which that will be satisfied, whether there'll be units on site or will there be a fee in lieu of. I think on a lot of the for sale units, the Affordable Housing Trust Committee is preferring the cash payment or a fee in lieu of. So we'll work with Mr. Fatsis and the board on that matter.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so this is a public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak on this, please just raise your hand. I'll call upon, yep, you can come up. Yeah. And while you make your way up, I'll just remind folks that we have sign-in sheets on the side windowsill. You can sign for or against. Just put your name down, say you're present. So there is an opportunity to sign in as well. Hello.
Hi, my name is Danielle Maloney. I live over on 100 Standish Ave. I spoke last time. I was in opposition to the building, and I do respect the changes that they made to the designs in reduction of the units, because one of my big issues was parking, and I do respect them for that, and I thank them for that. I still don't think they took into account traffic nor water, the water displacement. Before it was apartments, and the two owners would be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the water basin system. Going to a condominium, I'm assuming the HOA would be responsible. How would the HOA be held responsible? 194 people versus, or excuse me, 94 people versus 2 people. Just something to take into consideration. And then previously, the traffic report, I reread it, and I did briefly read this one again as well. The traffic does not include the new buildings that are being built over behind St. Anne's Church and 7-Eleven. So it's just just inconsistent traffic reports. So just would like that to be taken into consideration when they redo their traffic reports.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone else? No? Okay. So with that, I think this is a continuance. We heard that there is, they're still working with city consultants and public works. So I think we're looking 1 month out to June 25th.
I'll move to continue this hearing to June 25th.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Why don't we clarify it's both cases?
Oh, sorry, yes, so it's, sorry, my apologies. So it's 18, 24, and 28 Old Colony Ave, that's Plan Board Case 2025-06, and 38 Old Colony Ave, Plan Board Case number 2025-07.
I'll move for both those cases to be continued to June 25th.
And I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now we're moving back, and it will be another continued public hearing. This is on 86 and 92 Willard Street and 135 Robertson Street, Planning Board Case number 2025-05. Attorney Fleming.
Yeah, it's one of those nights again,
I
sorry. Again, Madam Chair and members of the board, for the record, Edward Fleming here on behalf of 622 Quarry LLC. I'm joined by Greg McDonald and Michael Kiley of Heritage Companies, and also Carlos Schulte and Dave Siebert, Carlos of CEC and Dave of BKA Architects. This also is a continued public hearing, continued from the March meeting date. As you remember, we made a full presentation of the proposal at that first meeting, whereby we were proposing a 58-unit building at 6 stories in total height. That was to provide for egress from both Quarry Street and Willard Street to 2 levels of parking under the building. There was significant comment at that meeting, both from the board and from the folks in the neighborhood. Concerns were raised about the height of the building. Concerns were raised about the number of units. Discussion was had, substantial discussion was had relative to traffic, but also traffic safety matters, especially at the intersection of Quarry, Willard, and Stedman, where the Clarks, who are neighbors in that location, and others, talked about the number of accidents at that location because of the configuration of that intersection. There was a lot of discussion and obviously a lot of comment made about the granite building that sits on the site. And there were discussions about whether it had any historic protection and concerns raised about whether that could be preserved or relocated in some fashion. My clients, who are also members of the community, took all of those issues to heart. And we had a meeting the following day where we had in-depth discussions about ways in which we could address and respond to those comments. My client initially, or I should say immediately, reached out to the mayor and had conversation with the mayor first about the meeting, but also about the discussions and concerns raised about the granite building that was on the site. And the mayor was very responsive. I know Greg had a great conversation with the mayor the following day, and the mayor expressed concern to try to address the concerns raised by the community and the neighbors. And the mayor took steps immediately to retain the services of a professional engineering firm to analyze the building on the site. And a photometric, photometric structural analysis was done of that building to determine whether or not that building could be addressed. But in addition to that, the direction was provided to our team as well, the traffic engineers of our team, to immediately have discussions with the city's traffic engineer about traffic-related concerns that were raised as well. And Carlos from CEC and his traffic people reached out immediately to Ali Rule, now Luff, at the city's traffic department to discuss issues related to traffic safety concerns. The goal being address each and every one of these items as we could. As a result of these discussions that we've had with the boards, of the departments, a result of discussions that we've had with the mayor, and in response to other concerns that were raised by the community, my clients have made a number of different changes, what we think are pretty substantial changes to the design of the building. So I'd like to just kind of walk through the ways in which we think we've attempted to address the concerns that were raised. And I'll walk through each and every item, and then I'm going to turn this over to Dave Siebert to kind of walk through the architectural plans in much more detail. So first, with regard to the granite building, steps, as I indicated, a conversation was had with the mayor, who was very, very supportive of taking a look at that. A video and photographic record was taken of the structure of the building to determine whether or not that structure could be relocated to a different facility or a different site. That study resulted, after the mayor consulted with other engineers within the city, in the opportunity to actually remove that building from the site and relocate and rebuild that structure at a different location. And as you may have seen in the papers where it was reported, a decision was made by the mayor after consulting with the city's engineering department and his professional consulting team to relocate the building to the site of the Quincy Quarry Museum, which is at the site of the Lions Turning Mill, the heart of Quincy's granite industry, not located within the Blue Hills as Peter indicated in the Patriot Ledger, but rather in the heart of the granite industry and the quarrying industry of Quincy. My client has agreed, as a result, to donate that structure and all the granite related to that structure and other granite on the site, maybe with regard to some of the supporting walls in the area, to the city at no cost, so that the city will have access to the site to remove the building and relocate the structure to the new location at the Lions Turning Mill. I personally think it's a fantastic location for the site. I think a number of people have expressed concern that they would like the building to remain. But the building can't remain on this site because, one, it's a privately owned property. It's been owned by the McDonald's for 30 years. And when they purchased the property in the first place, there were no restrictions that prevented them or prohibited them from removing that building. That building could have been removed a number of years ago if the McDonald's had chosen to do so. Moving this facility to a more public location, and certainly a site like the Lions Turning Mill, it can be utilized now as a permanent home for the granite museum industry. And it's an industry that Mr. Aldabina has worked very hard to create. Right now, he operates out of a couple of trailers on the site, and this will provide him with a permanent home to utilize that. And I wonder how many people have actually gone to the Lyons Turning Mill, but it's pretty fantastic up there. And this will really be a great addition to that location. With regard to traffic, as I indicated, Carl Ascolti and his traffic engineers immediately reached out to the city's traffic department. And please keep in mind, not only did the city's traffic department analyze the traffic at this location, but we provided our own professional traffic report. But the city also has a peer review consultant that has also analyzed the traffic at this location. And that analyzes not only existing traffic at the location, which we all talked about, which we understand is very heavy in this location, but it also analyzed some of the safety concerns and issues that exist in this particular location. During those discussions that we had with the city's traffic engineer, they made it clear to us that the first step in addressing traffic in these kind of situations, and certainly the first step in addressing any traffic safety concerns when it comes to the redesigning of intersections, is to first obtain an in-depth traffic study, a traffic safety study and report. So as a result of that, in our discussions with the city, my client has agreed to make a $30,000 contribution to the city for the purposes of obtaining a professional, comprehensive traffic study and report in order for the city then to have detailed information that they will need in order to make the changes to the intersections that are impacted by this. And that comprehensive study will not only study the Quarry, Willard, and Stedman Street intersection, but it will also study the other two intersections that are impacted by this proposal and by the traffic in the area, both on Quarry and Robertson, and on Willard and Robertson as well. That $30,000 contribution in our discussions with the planning department won't be made at when the building is done and occupied. It will be made before the building permit is issued. So typically, when contributions are requested of applicants in these types of matters, so-called mitigation towards these improvements, oftentimes those contributions aren't made until the building is completed and the applicant has the income from that particular building. In this case, my client has agreed to make that contribution even before the building permit is issued. So once final approvals are received, my client will make that $30,000 contribution. And in speaking with Ed Glennon and Ali Rule, they've indicated to us that they intend to immediately retain a professional traffic engineering company to study those intersections and perform that study. And that then ensures that these intersections will be addressed, we hope, before this building is even occupied. So that will address those concerns for the existing neighbors, for Mr. McDonald's existing patrons at his restaurants, but also for these new tenants. We think that that's a great commitment on the part of the applicant. And I've actually provided the city with a letter that I provided to Mr. Stevens, whereby we agreed to those two commitments. The commitment of donating the building and all the granite related to that building, which, by the way, there's actual value to that granite. That granite, as many people may know, has substantial value and could be sold. My clients agreed to donate that and provide the access to that site. But that $30,000 contribution is also a great contribution, and both of those are indicated and committed to in that letter. The other things that were done as well, and we think these are project-related specific changes, is that there were numerous comments and concerns about the height of the building, being 6 stories in height. And we took that into heart, and that the building has now been reduced by an entire story. So the entire 6th story of the building has been removed, causing this building to be 5 stories in height from Willard Street, as opposed to 6. and 4 stories on Willard Street. Or did I say from Quarry Street and Willard Street? The overall number of units also changed. So from 58 to 48, so 10 units have been removed from the proposal. In discussions with the city's planning department, we've also made efforts to make modifications of the Robertson Street entranceway to preserve and protect a mature oak tree that sits on Robertson Street. Now 2 large-size trees that are on the site will be preserved and maintained to provide that additional, just a natural landscaping in addition to the new landscaping that will be added to the site. We also made, I think, other changes that Carlos will highlight in detail as well. One of the issues that Mr. Kiley saw is that he was concerned about the having a loading area within the parking lot of the Robertson Street entranceway. And he was concerned about that trucks may interfere with other visitors that are coming to and from the site, and that as a result, trucks would be utilizing Robertson Street. So that loading area has actually been removed from the Robertson Street entryway, and it has been located now on Willard Street, away from the entry to the building, so that it won't interfere and it won't cause any issues with traffic, and it will eliminate any truck traffic on Robertson Street. Other things that were done, we relocated the transformer and the generator, which was also within the Robertson Street entryway, and that has now been placed towards the back of the building off Quarry Street. Again, opening up that green space for more natural green space and avoiding any kind of conflict in that particular location. We talked to the planning department about a designated pet area, and that's been added to the proposal as well. And the landscaping has been updated and revised. We talked with Mr. Stevens about adding some nice dense landscaping along the Willard Street corridor to kind of provide a buffer against the garage wall. And Mr. Kiley talked about utilizing some other vines and things of that nature that would grow up along the wall to provide that dense and very hardy landscaping. We really think that these have been substantial changes to the proposal, substantial commitments from the applicant. We are hopeful that they've addressed a number of the concerns that were raised. We are completely aware, in talking with Councilor Devine, that concerns continue today. We understand that folks would prefer a much smaller building on this site. We understand that some folks would prefer that the granite building remain on the site. But what we tried to do is we tried to at least listen and address some of the concerns that were raised by making some changes to the plan in consideration of the concerns that were raised. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to David, and David can walk through the architectural plans for us.
Thank you, Ed. Madam Chairman, board members, thank you. David Siebert from BK Architects in Quincy. As Ed mentioned, there's a few large alterations that have been made. And obviously, taking an entire floor off was biggest impact. The number of units, as he mentions, from 58 to 48. And when we were looking at how to achieve some of these changes, it opened up an opportunity to maybe look at some of the circulation, how loading was accessed from which street, et cetera. So there's a little bit of reorganization of amenity and common area that we all believe that will improve the overall efficiency of this building itself. A lot of the schematics, though, I would say are fairly similar to what you've seen before. But obviously you can see the height reduction by losing the floor, and the general vehicular pattern is generally the same, other than moving that loading and trash bay access off of the one-way Willard Street. You can see that's just under the roof deck to the right and or to the left in the lower left rendering. The materials, et cetera, are basically the same that you had seen previously. So, how are we doing this? Here we go. The lowest level at Quarry Street off of the driveway access remains relatively the same, 47 interior ground level parking spaces. The footprint did shrink with this reconfiguration, so the total square footage of this building reduced by approximately 22,000 square feet. But at this lowest level, we still have a main lobby accessed sort of in the knuckle of the building. And there's the only amenity at that level would be the mailroom and parcel room. And there are some below-grade utility spaces now. A level up, it filled in the half of the garage level with the reduction in units, the reduction in spaces. So now we have 75 interior garage spaces at this level off of Willard, where this level is accessed. There's 28 parking spaces on the interior, and that would lead you out into the elevator lobby and overlooking a two-story lobby below at the quarry level. And that's where we reconfigured some areas from amenities for the gym and leasing office that would be part of that entry experience. And then moving the trash access to the left of the building at this level allowed for an interior access from the elevator lobby directly into that, and a second means of egress from 4 units that were formerly parking garage spaces through a corridor and a vestibule lobby that leads you straight out onto Willard Street. And that garage entry just moved south by a bay for access. And then we have another vestibule access at the corner where we used to on the corner of Robertson and Willard. The third level is typical to 4 and 5. The only major difference is that the common area lounge space is located adjacent to that roof deck, which is above that loading area, which I pointed out earlier on. Levels 4 and 5, well, I guess it would be 4 on the quarry side. It's a typical floor plan. It was reconfigured. The units are redesigned in places, but there are typically 15 on these 2 levels. So brings the total count to the 48 that we mentioned. Top level, very similar. And then we had 3 units that were 1 beds. They pop up into a den area that would be accessed through an interior stair of each of these 3 units. They'd be slightly lower than what the head house would be for the stair access at the roof, which you can see in elevation here. The materials are similar and they're delineated on the elevations as well, but you can see the large tree that we've accommodated and we're able to retain with the reconfiguration of the parking and driveway accesses. Much more green space, as everybody's pointed out, in the entry court, which was, and there's a lot more room as well, just visually, and less cross-circulations of different types of functions. So, you know, there's a drive-in, I think 7 spaces on grade, and then just the garage access to contend with there. On the Willow Street level, you can see the garage entry doors, and that vestibule to the left of that, and then the new loading bays. That's good. Similar elevations that you've had a chance to look at. And that's that. Okay. I think that wraps that up as far as most of the changes and alterations. Thanks.
Good evening again, Carlos Sculte with Civil and Environmental Consultants. So I'll just walk through some of the changes that we have on the project. Again, the site context, I think everybody's familiar with the location. The demolition plan, the demolition activities haven't changed material, although one improvement that we did include with the plan at the request of the city was to include all new sidewalks along not just the frontage of our project, but essentially to complete the block. So now we're including all new concrete sidewalks throughout. Previously, it was a mix of asphalt and concrete to match what was there. Ultimately, as part of one of the requests, we are replacing all new concrete sidewalks along the entire frontage. And then including the McDonald insurance at the corner, which is the bottom left corner of the site there as well. And one of the other things we did was we expanded the sidewalk in certain areas. There's municipal infrastructure at the corner of Quarry and Robertson. So we actually widened the sidewalk there to provide additional space for ADA access. There's a traffic control box, and there's some concrete posts and things there. So we're going to be cleaning up that public space as well and providing more accessibility in that area. So helping improve the accessibility around the site. And as mentioned earlier, I won't repeat it too much, but we were able to move the loading from the low side of the building. I'll get up here and point to it if that's okay. So the loading in the previous iteration used to be right here. And now the new loading space is going to be off of Willard Street. So that provides a pullout for not only the trash service and the access, but also for Amazon trucks and things of that nature to be able to get off the road. It's also better circulation to keep passenger cars in that lower area. So we were able to, consolidate activities, and by doing so, we were also able to better reconfigure the parking there. And there's a large existing tree that we talked about. That's located right here, so we shifted the drive aisle further to the south to be able to protect that tree. And also there's another large tree that's on the Quarry Street side, so the building was bumped out to be able to provide more canopy space for that tree to be able to help maintain that large mature vegetation that we have in the area. We also updated some small things like the sightline visibility triangles as part of the peer review process. And updated a few minor layout revisions that they requested. As part of the stormwater management approach, there really weren't a lot of comments that came out of the peer review or the DPW process. We updated some confirmatory numbers as it related to the storm events that were being used and the sizing of the stormwater pipes. Ultimately, there weren't material changes to the infrastructure proposed as part of the project. And just as a refresher, we are taking all the stormwater runoff from the building roof area. We're going to route it through the stormwater chambers that you see in the upper right corner of the site plan there, which are all underneath the parking lot, where the stormwater will be detained. It'll infiltrate into the ground, and then it'll overflow to the municipal system. In the proposed condition, there'll be less total runoff going to the municipal system at a lower rate. So today, the site's predominantly impervious. There's a lot of pavement there. There's no stormwater management treatment to speak of. Everything just kind of sheet flows across the site into the street. We're going to be able to capture it, convey it, bring it all underground, and tie into the municipal system. Went through the DPW and the peer review. Nothing really was identified that warranted substantial revisions to the plan. And we did identify the floodplain as well on the site. That was not included on the last set of plans just because it wasn't on the site, but for context, the floodplain is located northeast of the site, and we're a little taller, I can point to it, but it's right here at the corner of Robertson and Quarry Street, so it's essentially northeast of the site. Our entire site is out of the floodplain, and the building is several feet above it. So we just showed it for reference, even though it doesn't impact any of the development that we have on our site. Just due to the consideration, I know a number of folks spoke out about drainage issues that they have in the neighborhood. Again, you know, we're outside of that floodplain and we're managing and maintaining the stormwater. It's going to improve the existing conditions from what's happening today. And then from a utility standpoint, just some coordination that we were doing with DPW as it related to the type of connection for the sewer and the water connections to the street, nothing material. As with most projects in the city of Quincy, one of the things that we will be doing is performing a closed circuit TV inspection of the sewer line that we're connecting to on Robertson Street. So that's just part of what we would expect to do, just to be able to document the capacity and the condition of that line. We'll also be doing hydrant flow tests just to be able to confirm the water pressure in the area as it relates to the support of the fire suppression system that'll be designed for the building. That's typically done prior to building permit submission. So we anticipate we'll be doing those things prior to the building permit submission as well. And then one of the big improvements also was the relocation of the transformer and the generator. That used to previously be located down here in this corner where the loading used to be. We were able to relocate it off of Quarry Street in this corner here, and that better enabled us to widen that main entrance that we have at the lower level, creates a more generous landscape area as well as the experience for the residents and people coming in there as well. So I think that was a positive change as well, being able to consolidate that infrastructure a little bit more off to the side by Quarry Street. The landscape plan, again, generous landscaping along the foundations of the buildings as well as the corner of Quarry and Robertson. We were able to open that up by pulling all the improvements further back from the street. There'll be a small monument sign there, reusing some of that existing granite that's on site. There's some walls and other things. We're going to repurpose that material to be able to play off that historic element of what was there, to essentially have it match up with the context of the neighborhood and the history as well. Again, very generous landscaping along the foundation of the building. And in green, you can see the two large mature trees that we will be protecting as part of the project. Photometrics plan, a lot of the lighting will be building mounted, again, just because everything's fairly close to the building. There isn't a need for any pole mounted lighting really to light up the parking lot. So we have that on the low side as well as the high side on the Willard Street. We have some low level bollard mounting and accent lighting to be able to provide that curb appeal along the Willard Street side as well. So with that, I believe that's all the information that we have at this point. I turn it back over to Ed.
Okay, all right, let me see if anybody has questions. No. Yes.
I have a couple of
Sure.
questions, please. So the biggest concern, it seems, up there, and we've already addressed it, is probably the water runoff and so forth. And you said it's going to be it's going to be a lot less water runoff because you're going to capture that. Do you have any idea, like, have they done any calculations? Like, we're going to have a lot of water coming up tomorrow, right, with the
Sure.
big storm.
Yep.
If that were to happen after this is built, what's the capacity of the water storage here? So if we have a 2-day event that's throwing down 2 or 3 inches of water,
Yep.
how many gallons is that gonna hold there?
Yeah, so we size these based on metrics they identify. The city has a stormwater ordinance as well as Mass DEP has stormwater standards. So we look at the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storm events. So that goes all the way up to essentially an 8-inch storm event. So we take a look at the ability of in this case, most of the site is the building. So the roof drain systems on the buildings will accept that runoff. It all gets drained underground and goes through that system. So that system's designed to essentially recharge and infiltrate, 100% of a 1-inch storm. With anything that exceeds that has an overflow connection that goes underground to the city's municipal system. So that connection's sized and the system's sized to pass the entire storm event up to the 100-year storm event through that system and to the municipal system at a rate that's less than the runoff off the site today. So everything up to a 100-year storm event.
So the water runs off into the municipal system. Is our system capable of handling this much water that's gonna run off that? Have you guys, do they do that type of calculations? Like, you're gonna take it, it's gonna fill up, and I appreciate what you're gonna do now. I like
Yep.
that, right? Everybody likes that,
Yep.
especially the neighbors, I'm sure. So now, you're gonna put that into the system because you've reached your 1 inch.
Yep,
Even though it's designed for an 8 inch, as you
Yep.
just said, an 8 inch, but
Yep.
it's now you're at 1 inch and you're gonna start getting rid of water.
yep.
Is the system that you're dumping into, that the city is responsible for, or the MWR or somebody like that, right?
It's the city, yeah.
The city,
Yep.
is that capable of handling that much more water that used to go over to the neighborhood and flood them, which was bad, obviously? But do we have the capacity to take all that extra water that you guys are now gonna be putting into, not you guys, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
nature
yeah.
Puts it into there.
So,
Do we have
yeah.
that capacity?
So the way that we look at it is, what happens on our site and what's happening as it leaves the site, right?
Right.
It would be a huge undertaking to evaluate all of the city's stormwater infrastructure to see, is it a 25-year storm? Is it a 100-year storm? How does that work? How do, little micro ponds work if there are localized flooding conditions? So we take a look at what's leaving our site today and what's leaving it in the future. And the design metric that we look at is to reduce what's leaving our site, because that's really all we can control.
Right.
So to your question on what the capacity of the city's infrastructure is, I don't have the answer to that. We rely on the DPW review to identify, is there a problem with the infrastructure that we need to take a deeper look at? And I think that maybe, referring to a previous project that we were on the docket for, the city identifies issues ahead of time proactively, hopefully, and then we try and work with the city to design our projects to address any issues that are identified. So in this case, when DPW did their review, they didn't identify any problems with the drainage system that would limit what we're doing to it. I don't know exactly to what size it might be, or to what storm event it might be sized for right here, but they didn't identify any problems.
I guess you understand and appreciate why I'm saying this, right?
Yep.
So, because for some poor neighbor that's up there, and they love the idea that the water's gonna be captured, right? Everybody does.
Yep.
And I'm sure you don't have the answer to say how much can we put into the city. But let's assume for a moment that we can't put a lot more into the city beyond the 1 inch. So do the engineers then think, okay, we can handle 1 inch, how much more does it take to handle 2 inches? Because you'd have to go deeper to handle, I'm assuming, like 2 inches or 3 inches, cost benefit analysis. And I'm not trying to kill the thing with, hey, let's not over-engineer this, because then it kills the project. That's not good. It doesn't help the neighborhood. It doesn't help you know what I mean? But engineering-wise, I don't know how they calculate this stuff, but I would say, all right, if you have a bathtub and it's gonna overflow, well, make it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and maybe just to clarify, we're not adding any water to the city system. So what happens today is it just sheet flows across the street.
Right.
There's catch basins.
You're
in the
actually
street.
making it better.
We're making it better. So
I agree.
It goes into the catch basin, it's right in the system. We're going to the same
I
system.
agree that you're making it better. I'm
Yeah.
not arguing that point at all, but you do kind of see what I'm saying, right? If you're the neighbor over there and you're thinking, God, the water's terrible now, these guys are gonna come in there, is it gonna be worse? No, it's gonna be better,
Yep.
but how much better, I guess? And then another question, unrelated to water. Are these condominiums or are they apartments?
Apartments.
They're apartments. Gas or electric?
Not 100% sure yet,
Okay, thank you.
depending on what National Grid will allow.
The only reason I asked that, and I meant to ask that last applicant up here, was you see the news recently and, the gas meters, the electric meters, excuse me, are spinning so fast, it almost looks like a comedy movie, And then you go and say, wow, it's great to have electricity. Well, not when you have to pay for it, I suppose, right? So, thank you, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Member Sheehan.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. The 3 units up on the roof, those den units, right? Are they gonna have, are you gonna have, well, your condensers and everything will be up there. Are you gonna block the condensers so you're not looking at those when you're up there for those units, or? Because condensers aren't the most attractive thing to look at.
Michael Kiley, the applicant from the Heritage Companies. Yes, the reason we do these dens here is, since COVID, we've had tremendous requests for dens or offices. because most people, work from home today. So to have that idea, to be able to have a pop-up removed, because the bedroom's on the front side, if you look at that particular floor
Yeah.
plan, if you go down back one, thank you. If you look over here, on this particular area, when you walk in the door,
Yeah.
the bedroom is here. So if somebody goes out of bed, just say happens to be a roommate, goes up here, or husband or wife, goes up here, goes up to the roof, completely away from that bedroom, which is everybody's desire to have. Sometimes the dens are a little closer to the bedroom, and they wake them up. So the idea is to bring that up, and we will absolutely design that in a way that whether the condensers are there, if they are, they might be high windows and a skylight. So we will take that into account, because the last thing I would want to do is be looking at condensers.
Right.
But there's no access to the roof from those dens either. They're just go
Just a
up.
window.
There's windows and no access to the actual. So in that particular scenario, depending on the layout of the condensers, we would either put high windows and/or skylight, just to bring some natural light in there, yes. Yes, and we know that from David, but the location of them are directly in the middle of the building, a little lower than the override of the roof and the elevator.
Right. I mean, I gotta say, I think since it's a nicer looking building now that you shrunk it down a little bit, I mean, it fits a little bit better. It's nice looking, I like the design. The lighting in the parking lot, I don't know, I just being a little concerned with the lighting in the parking lot on the Quarry and Robinson Street. I don't think the building will throw adequate light there, but that's for you guys to decide. And then to Ms. McDonald, it's your project. Like I say to everyone in the city of Quincy, you just heard me last time, you're gonna hear me again. When choosing a developer, you are the developer, when choosing a contractor, please choose a contractor that can hire the men and women that live in the city of Quincy, and they can work in the city of Quincy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I just had a question about those dens. Could you pull up the elevation of it, if you can? So I guess, so where are the windows on them? What's the plan? Because it's a little bit tough to make out here. So we see a little bit of a window.
Sure, yeah, you're seeing that den pop up right here.
Yep.
That's the single window in that den facing towards Willard in this instance. And to the point where condensers may be, since these single windows face out towards the exterior elevation, most of all of the condensers would be sort of perpendicular and inboard of any view from that window itself.
Microphone.
And the window won't be operable, so there's no getting on and off of the roof?
Right.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because I personally, I would prefer to see those not there, and I just want, you did say the entire 6th story removed, the entire floor comes off. That's not really accurate, because you have these 3 spaces that are
Yeah,
going to be built
I mean, they were
there.
looked at as a penthouse of that
Yeah.
unit below, so that was the differentiator there.
Okay,
And the stair towers are also a bit, in all buildings too,
Yeah.
even though there's not a story, those stair towers are always visible on the roof. And these will be, almost like stair towers that will be visible. That's what you'll see. I mean, it's a very minimal intrusion of that tall, that upper level.
yeah, I understand, thank you. 2 just comments, 1, I know everybody has touched on it, I will tell you, that tree, it's important that it stays. I was out there, I said I looked at soft serve last night, and I was looking at it. It's important that it stays, and there's obviously a lot of work happening on the site, especially with the demolition of the existing structures. And I think it's important that you pass along to other folks doing work the importance of that tree staying. And then just my comment, the stormwater engineering, I'm not an engineer, I defer to you folks, DPW, the city departments, to do those calculations. So I think that's it right now from the board. It is a public hearing. I'm going to read, I've received 3 comments before we open it to comments in person. So the first is correspondence from Virginia Ryan. Dear Planning Board, my name is Virginia Ryan. I currently reside on 89 Alaric Road, Quincy, Mass. My home is in the back of the Common Market. On March 21st, 2025, I attended the meeting regarding this proposal and was not in favor of it due to traffic, the size, additional infrastructure stress. Numerous residents attended the meeting and were not in favor due to the issues above. The developer has now submitted a new proposal eliminating one floor going from 6 stories to 5 stories, also reducing the apartments from 58 units and 105 parking spaces to 48 units and 84 parking spaces. Traffic. Again, this is a high traffic area with congestion, very heavy in the morning and heavy traffic starting at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Everybody has 2 vehicles in their home now, so there will be parking on the streets, which will add to the congestion. Has a traffic study been completed yet, and will it be released? Footprint. I visit that area quite a bit due to the number of restaurants in that little pocket, and the surrounding area is mainly single home dwellings. This proposal is not a good fit due to that. I've spoken about the flooding in this area, and my neighbors and I are very concerned about it. Quincy's home ownership is below 50% according to the Mass Municipal website. Why isn't the city encouraging more projects that increase home ownership instead of little pockets of tight communities? We are fast becoming a transient community. Again, I do not support this development. Sincerely, Virginia Ryan. The next correspondence is dated May 21st, 2025 from Maria Mulligan, who is an architect. Members of the planning board, by way of this letter, please consider my suggestions concerning revised proposed development being considered this evening. Since I will not be able to attend tonight's planning board meeting, kindly read my comments into the record and seek responses to my concerns. In summary, I am opposed to this proposal for 2 reasons. 1, the revised proposed design does not incorporate restoration, repurposing of the existing historic granite house on the corner of Willard and Robertson Streets. Refer to my prior letter and testimony at the March 19th, 2025 hearing. 2, the revised proposed design because does not comply with the per dwelling unit open space requirement as described in detail below, which is the subject of this letter. Revised proposed development review comments. Open space required per dwelling unit. The minimum open space required per dwelling unit is 400 square feet per unit. 19,200 square feet is required for 48 dwelling units. Useful outdoor spaces are spaces that accommodate passive recreation by the residents that live in the building, like sitting under the shade tree, eating lunch on a lawn, playing with a child in a courtyard, or walking a dog, etc. Spaces that provide opportunities like this include open lawns, courtyards, terraces, or private balconies. To comply with the open space requirement for 48 dwelling units, 19,200 square feet of usable open space must be provided without seeking variance. Open space provided per dwelling unit. The proposed design only includes 158 square feet per dwelling unit, 84 square feet total is provided. In lieu of complying with this requirement, the project team is seeking a variance. The open spaces provided are minimal and insufficient. The triangular shape of the project site offers a limited amount of area to accommodate the required open space for 48 dwelling units proposed. There is too much impervious paved space due to the 2-way drive and surface parking, and only a few of the units have been designed with balconies. Commentary and suggestions. In congested and dense urban environments, open and green space is essential to improve the health, wellness, and enjoyment by the residents. It is for this reason that the zoning requirement stipulates a minimum amount of useful open space area per dwelling unit be provided. The lack of the proposed design to conform to this requirement demonstrates that the proposed design is too large for the site. Therefore, requesting a variance in lieu of providing critical open spaces for residents is not acceptable by any measure. Increasing density for housing does not have to result in decreasing useful open space for the residents. Design strategies that embrace reducing the amount of surface parking, expanding surface area for landscape courtyards and lawns, providing dedicated balconies and shared terraces can solve this problem and increase the opportunities for enjoyable open space. To that end, please consider the suggestions on the markup drawings attached. Kindly acknowledge receipt of this letter, include it in the project record for this hearing, and there are a couple plans with notations attached. Finally, to the Quincy Planning Board from Catherine and Robert Clark, 69 Willard Street. This is also dated May 21st, 2025. We reviewed the revised traffic analysis dated April 30th, 25, prepared for the Heritage Company. Referenced below in italics are sections from page 11. Several times throughout the report, it notes existing capacity restrictions, intersection controls, and proximity to off-ramps to I-93 create a congested roadway network with queues backing up through upstream intersections during the peak hours. These issues are a regional problem. Without significant changes that reduce traffic volumes at the study intersections, congestion and queue backups will continue to occur. Therefore, no mitigations to the existing study intersections are anticipated to be required to accommodate the minimal traffic volumes anticipated to be generated by the proposed development. This information several times references the total number of crashes with each of the abutting intersections to the proposed project, including the intersection of Willard Street with Quarry and Stedman, with the comment the crashes are likely related to the merging traffic at the unorthodox geometric orientation of the intersection, and no fatal injuries were reported. And our comment is so far no fatal injuries. The unorthodox intersection geometry, parking maneuvers within the center of the intersection, and lack of pavement markings for clear lane designation on Willard are the most likely culprits of the incidents, and notes that the anticipated minimal peak hour site generated traffic volumes of the development and the locations of the driveways are not anticipated to exacerbate these conditions. Improvements to these geometric conditions are beyond the scope of the proposed development. Again, we want to emphasize from our viewpoint that this development will exacerbate these conditions, especially during peak hours, and we do not feel that improvements to these geometric conditions are beyond the scope of the proposed development, to which all connected project intersections directly abut the development. Having the development partners in the city of Quincy come to an agreement to improve these conditions will prevent further accidents and any fatalities. Also reviewed was the memo attached dated May 12, 2025 from Allison Luff. We do so hope that the project proponent will contribute to the city's request for a comprehensive road safety audit to mitigate the crash experience at these intersections. This audit and results will benefit on a safety level all parties and any citizens who drive on these roads and related intersections, as well as respond to crucial comments made regarding how is the outcome of capacity analysis if the intersections are actually uncoordinated, and that a mode split was not applied due to the size of the development, and to present a conservative analysis, as well as the comments regarding the site plans. We also have submitted to Allison Luff and Ed Grennan our in-depth comments regarding the Willard, Quarry, and Stedman Street intersection. Also noted is that on June 10th, 2015, there is an open, should be 2025, there is an open public hearing regarding ZBA 2025, a special permit and variance to raise the existing structures. We would like to know how any related construction is going to be handled so as to minimize interference with the abutting functioning businesses and residents. Also, we did not see any memo put formally in writing how the extensive native Quincy granite stone 200-year-old building on the property is going to be preserved. We are grateful that Mayor Koch announced his intention to work with the developers to preserve this historic building. Can this intention be put in a formal memo with this project, as nowhere it is mentioned? In the same breath, when speaking of the city of Quincy, one always notes we are known as a city of presidents. John and his partner Abigail Adams, and John Quincy Adams and his partner Louisa Catherine Adams, and at the same time, as always noted, we are the Granite City. Solomon Willard Street is named in his memory and contributions. The architect and construction supervisor who made the Bunker Hill Memorial, along with all the quarry stoneworkers, to become a reality and ensured it was made of Quincy granite, the material best suited. Examples of other famous building made of our Quincy granite are Quincy's Old City Hall, the Stone Temple, United First Parish Church, and of course King's Chapel, Boston. As Abigail Adams famously wrote to her husband John Adams when the Continental Congress was laying the framework for our Constitution, remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Let's never forget the tireless contributions of Solomon Willard and our quarry stonecutters. A suggestion is to take part of the outlying perimeter Quincy granite from the site and integrate it into a new island to replace the current invisible one. In the future, dedicate to Solomon Willard when in-depth work is done to improve the intersections of Willard, Quarry, and Stedman. And there are just some pages attached as well. Before I open to public comment, I'll just address a couple of the questions and comments. One was, has the traffic study been completed and will it be released? That is available. It's in the public hearing files, the public record, and that is open to inspection. The other point was reference to the variances, and then there was further reference to the ZBA public hearing. Our board does not grant variances. That is the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that is not within our purview. And with that, I will open it for public comment. You can raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you. There's also sign-in sheets on the window ledge. Yes, sir.
So I spoke to.
Oh, you need to, yeah, just come up if you could, and while you make your way, if you could just provide your name and address, and then your comments, please. Thank you.
My name is Paul Burke, 37 White Street, West Quincy. Actually, Ward 4, the building's in Ward 3, but it's going to be in my sight line. I was kind of disappointed to hear that the building's size was going to be downgraded. That means less tax money. My concern is they're doing my street over, and that costs the city money, taxes. And this is kind of a discouraging development for me. I was hoping the 58 units was going to be approved by the zoning board or the planning board, and to hear it's gone from 58 to 48, that's kind of discouraging for me. I was in favor of the project from the get-go. I'm not in a butter, but the project will be in my sight line since I live fairly close. I was hoping that some information could come forward of the amount of tax money that the current property generates compared to how much tax money is going to be coming in to the city with the new project. Obviously, the more money that project pays, the less money I'm going to pay for taxes on my house. So I was kind of hoping that the planning board would have that information. I don't know if you can get it, or if that goes through the Board of Assessors, if Treasury or some department in the city has that information, because I think that's important. For a project this size in West Quincy, that obviously that money would be better for the site to be paying than for the homeowners to be paying. And as far as I'm concerned, I have not heard otherwise. The 6 units are low income. I have not heard any change. So they've dropped 10 units, but they're going to keep 6 of those units as low income. I mean, they're not giving, they're actually giving more than they're being taken away from them. I understand there's a lot of people that are against it. You know, this is the city. This is not the country. There's not a lot of space to build housing. And there's people that need a place to live. And apartments, yeah, it's close to Boston. So a lot of people would go to these apartments, rent them, and travel to work. They're not coming through the city to go to work. They're going from the apartment right onto the highway. It's less than 100 yards to get onto the highway from this apartment. So it's not like these people are going to be leaving their house, traversing through the city, and then going to Boston. They're going to be leaving their house or leaving their apartment and heading right to Boston to go to work. They're not going to be cutting through the city. Hopefully, the planning board would give that some consideration. People need a place to live. Not everybody can afford $1 million to buy a house in Quincy, and that's about what the going rate is. There's a house on Cornell Street, $1 million. 69 Willard Street is on the market for $1.2 million. I mean, I don't know who's buying it, or who's gonna buy it, but that's a lot of money. And obviously, the people that are gonna be renting these apartments can't afford to buy a house, but they need a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while you go sit, I'll just respond. So the tax revenue generated by a project is not really within the purview of this board and part of our consideration in site plan review. And I believe it's 5 units that are going to be affordable. So there has been a reduction of 1. Thank you. Anyone else wish? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Mike Rourke. I live at 100 Stedman Street. I'm about 390 feet from this project. You can see it from my second floor. My kids are going to be staring at it out their bedroom windows once it's built, so I really feel passionately about this. My biggest complaint, I appreciate the work that's gone into reducing the size of this building. That was my biggest complaint from the beginning, was the size. I don't think this fits in at all with the neighborhood. You go out there, across Willard Street, there's a 2-story restaurant. The building right next door is 2.5 stories. Across Corey Street, there's a 2.5-story apartment building. For a 2-year storm, they are decreasing the runoff by a significant amount, but the 2-year storms aren't what caused the flooding in the neighborhood. It's the big storms. It's the 10-year storms, the 25-year storms. And for those storms, for a 10-year storm, they're only reducing the runoff rate by 2%, and a 25-year storm, they're only reducing the runoff rate by 5%. It's better than nothing. It's a reduction, but at the same time, this site's it's less than 0.8 of an acre. You know, it's like half a football field. You know, any reduction of water is not going to save the neighborhood from flooding from this small of a site. The traffic, I know traffic's a regional issue. Everybody has concerns about traffic. It makes me happy that they agreed to pay for a traffic study for those areas. However, I'd like to see more. Like, what happens when that study comes out and they say that we need a median or we need different things added? You know, I'd like to see more of a commitment that, you know, the applicant will be able to pay for some of that. The Granite House, to me, that's just being used as leverage. You know, I personally don't feel strongly about the Granite House. I think that essentially it's kind of like a taxpayer bailout for the developer right now, because it gives him good publicity saying he can donate the house to the city. But tomorrow night, they're going to be asking for almost $1 million worth of taxpayer money to move that house to the turning mill, the museum site. They're using the community preservation money, or they're trying to, and it's $919,000 of taxpayer money that's going to be used to take that down and move it. To me, that's you know, I'm going to be looking at this from my house knowing that I helped fund this project with my tax dollars, you know? That's how I feel. So I guess my last point is dozens of residents turned out the first meeting, the community meeting, and tonight opposed to the size of this project. I don't think a lot of people want to see it eliminated totally. I think we just need to scale it down more. I've only heard one resident speak out in favor of the project. And then, so I do have a question for the board too, because when I was doing some research, I came across the applicant's application to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which I know you guys aren't, but they included a letter that was a memorandum of support, and this was filed May 7th, saying that the planning board had already approved this project. So I don't know if you guys know anything about that. I have a copy here. It was filed by Mr. Fleming.
I'll take it right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, board members. My name's Jim Dunn. I live on 167 Babcock Street, Quincy. I know nobody wants to see any more development in Quincy, but it's going to happen, okay? That's all we hear about is the big bad developer. Well, this developer in question, Michael Kiley, has built some quality properties. Michael doesn't build condominiums where he builds them, forms a home association, and that's the end of them. Look at Mechanic Street. He took an old parking lot. It's a beautiful structure now for working people. Working class people live there. You could see him come and go, commuting on the trains and so on. But this project here, right now, the water's shutting off. The water's shutting off onto the gutters, into the street. I know this area is historically, Ulrich Road and all them are bad, but I believe the city has some plans in the works to build a pumping station at the end of Furnace Ave. I know those plans have been going on for 5 years or so, and I think that's going to alleviate a lot of the problem. And they just finished rebuilding part of the Furnace Brook, which should also help. But this project, it'll be going into chambers, going into the ground, and it'll eliminate a lot of the shed roll-off. But like I say, Mr. Kiley isn't the big bad guy that wants to build in the city of Quincy. Everybody's building. The guy that was here before on Old Colony Ave, he's driving back to Needham right now. Mr. Kiley's from Quincy, lives in Quincy. He learned from his father, Fred, and he builds a great project. Anybody wants to go look at Wharf Street in Weymouth. Beautiful. He took an old warehouse, redid it. It's beautiful over the Osprey down there. Michael isn't just a hit and run builder. And I'd like to just thank the members for your time. And also the traffic, no one's going to do anything about the traffic up there. the good Lord comes back tomorrow, there's still gonna be traffic up there. Okay? Let's face it, let's not kid each other. But I know how Mr. Kiley works. If they have suggestions to help the public, help the greater need of the residents, and I know Mr. Stevens will tie it into the project. It'll all be part of it. There are safeguards in place for this scope of work, but everybody just wants to shoot off and, big bad developers and this and that. But in this case, you don't have one here. You get a developer that's from Quincy, based in Quincy, and he's not just selling these at condo and going back to his multi-million-dollar home in Needham. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sharon Hayes at 207 Plymouth Ave. And regarding the project, long before this even coming to our neighborhood, the traffic is an issue. And it is not just on Willard Street in Stedman, though I can truly appreciate the volume they have to put up with. But Plymouth Ave and Governors Road, it's ridiculous. It's backed all the way up on Governors now. And on Plymouth, there's no speed bumps, so they go down very quickly. I have called Allison Luff probably about twice a year for the past 3 years, and I've been told Plymouth Ave is on the list for a traffic study. And I can appreciate the money that you're putting into the traffic study for the impact of this development. Recently, I called knowing this meeting was coming up, and I was told I was not on a list for a traffic study because the speed indicators were collecting the data. Well, the speed indicator on my street just reads too fast, and the stop sign at the bottom is optional. And this is all morning. Governors, they go a little bit slower because they have speed bumps the whole way. And all of this is a direct roll-in from Willard where they make an illegal turn all morning. So my ask is, why can't we address that side? That doesn't seem to be in any of your traffic, the streets that you listed. And it is impacted. People are going to try to avoid coming by there if the traffic is going to grow, and it's going to feed onto our streets as well. And as far as them going straight onto the highway in the morning, I live on Plymouth Ave, and it can take up to 15 minutes to get from my house onto the exit to get in town. 15 minutes, and it's not even a quarter of a mile. The traffic study that you're going to do, my concern is that the developments on Willard Street, they may be in Milton, but will they reflect? They won't be completed, so they won't reflect this traffic study. And those do have a direct impact on Willard Street. It's not that we don't want a development, and I can appreciate the scaling back that you did do. But it is going to impact traffic, not just on Willard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes. Sorry.
I just have a couple questions. My name is Kathy O'Callaghan. I live in Olive Road. I live right next to the ball field. My biggest concerns is the flooding. And the other concern I have is for the parking, does tenants have to pay for the parking with their lease?
Typically, yes.
Okay, so usually like 2 cars per unit, maybe 1. And what if they decide that they can't afford the parking? So that pushes them out to the street.
Typically, our experience has been that if they don't have the parking, they won't rent there. Typically, that's been the process.
Okay, is there, I'm trying to figure out, so if you don't take the parking and you have cars, will they be denied rent there or not?
We usually confirm that they're parking a vehicle as they come in on their application.
Okay.
Yes.
So now that
If you could, sorry, if you could just direct the questions
Okay.
to me first, and then we'll, yeah. and
Okay,
then we'll have- yeah.
so, the other question is, I came in late, so I'm not really sure, but you talked about the traffic, they're gonna pay for the traffic surveying or study. So, is it gonna be done after the building is being done or before?
So there's a traffic study that they have submitted as part of their application process, and that has been peer reviewed. And then they're paying, or they're contributing to a traffic study to be performed by the city relative to the intersection just north of.
No, it's all three
Oh, it's all three, I'm
intersections.
sorry, thank you. So that will be
Done before or
undertaken.
afterwards?
Well, they've indicated that they're going to be making the contribution prior to obtaining their building permit, and Attorney Fleming indicated the hope in making that contribution early is so that the city can undertake that review while the project's being built out. So it would be before the occupancy permit. That's what they indicated tonight.
Okay. And again, I'm not an engineer or anything, but I'm really concerned about those catch basins. And I wish there'd be more information for someone who's not an engineer to understand that it's not gonna overload our sewer system when it does leach out to the pipes, because we're downhill from this project. And what typically happens when we have these northeasters, the park fills up with water, it comes out, the pipes overload, and then the sewers start to bubble up, and we get flooded out in Albrecht Road. And we've had some major problems down there. So, I mean, the city did a great job cleaning up First Parkway, and I feel like if we overload our system again with this project, that we're just gonna be starting all over again. You know, it's a big concern for our neighborhood.
Yes, so there is information publicly available in this file specific to this application. The engineering department has looked at and reviewed and approved, found consistent with the city's plans, these materials that have been submitted. I'm sure that you could go to the engineering department as well and ask any questions that you have about the materials that have been submitted, but they are in the file, and you can review all of those as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes.
My name is Sharon Traft, and I live at 127 Plymouth Ave. I'm just going to embellish what the other woman on Plymouth Ave, and I need to make sure that something is taken into account when you have the traffic study that does not concern Quincy. It concerns Quincy, but it's not in Quincy. Right now, in the morning, as that woman said, the traffic trying to get on the expressway is backed up beyond the common market. So you think you can avoid it by going down Robinson Street to Adams Street. That's not going to happen. That's backed up beyond the liquor store there. So it's already very congested, and the same thing happens later in the afternoon. Now, if you should get by the and get on the expressway, that only helps you a little, because just past the expressway in Milton, there's a huge condo going up. And then further down behind Abbey Park, there's 92 units going up. All of those people are gonna pull onto Willard Street. It's gonna be backed up to Quincy. You're gonna have a problem here. They need to look at that and take that into consideration, because I know it's not Quincy, but it's gonna affect Quincy. And it's gonna affect it within half a mile, quarter mile of this development. I'm just making a statement, I'm not saying you're wrong not looking at it, but you're not thinking of it, but I'm thinking of it as I go by it often. And you can take a drive down, you can see it, and if you really wanna see the big one, go behind Abbey Park, where they used to have parking and everything. There's no parking there now. They took all of that out, removed the house, 92 units going in there. So you could never get through East Milton Square before. So you might as well just drive through, you can vote there. That's basically what happens, it's so bad. Now, the other concern I have is, I'm not quite sure why they removed that. Well, I do, they're concerned about trucks going in on the Robinson Street area, so they're gonna come in on Willard Street. When you get to the top of Robinson Street, if you go left, away from East Milton Square, it's two ways. If you go right, it's one way. There's a lovely restaurant there that has lovely food that I frequent often. But they have big delivery trucks all the time because it's the only way you can get the beer, the wine, the meat, the lettuce, tomatoes, and everything else we use. So now you're gonna put this one right next to this one. Well, that's gonna be a big help. It just does not seem conducive. I'm not a traffic expert, but I know what congestion is. And it doesn't, unless you can only deliver between, 6 and 8 in the morning, which is not a good time because that's when the commute is on. I'm just saying there's gonna have to be an addition restriction or someone's gonna have to consider it. And the other thing is, the worst, in my opinion, because I drive there a lot, the worst part is when you turn off of Willard onto Stedman. So you're at where the McDonald Insurance office is right now. If you're coming off of Willard to make the turn, there's no stop sign because there's 4 bazillion cars behind you. They want you to keep moving. As soon as you go around, you're at the tip. Those people coming up Quarry Street, they either don't read or don't care. Because that is a horrific area. Now you're gonna have all these people, they're not gonna come on Willard Street with the traffic. They're gonna try and cut through. They're gonna come up there. The only solution I can think of is, which no one is gonna like, I mean, I will like it, but the people that, is a red light. So they have to stop. I mean, give it a try some morning. It's a dangerous place to be, that's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
My name is Donna Mattis, and I live at 47 Grove Street. Just a quick question, I know, and thank you for the study contribution for the traffic, because you know how much we're all looking forward to that. But curious about that, the traffic study that's gonna happen before the project, is it also gonna not just include what a lot of us are concerned about, like crosswalks, pedestrian cross lights, different things like that? Because there's none of that right now in that area by the restaurants and the store and whatnot. Are they also gonna take into consideration what the demolition and the construction of this project, regardless of how big it's gonna be, and what kind of impact that's gonna have on that area, that whole area? Because it's coming right off the highway, heading to the highway, heading into East Milton Square. It's already a nightmare. It's all backed up, and when you have construction going on, you got trucks, you got this, you got that, they're gonna have to block stuff off. I know when that apartment building on Stedman Street had a fire, it took me like an hour and a half to figure out how to get home from Wollaston Beach to Grove Street, because everything, every which way that I could possibly get home was blocked off because of that fire in that much smaller apartment building. So if there's gonna be construction going on there, or even if there's a fire going on there, that stuff gonna be considered in the traffic study also, I'm wondering.
So there are conditions that are attendant to all of our decisions relative to construction. That the construction time period won't be considered in any traffic study. That traffic study is focused on the long-term improvements. for
Okay,
those
so as far as
intersections.
planning for like how people get to and from their houses and exist
Long-term,
during the
yes.
construction, what's gonna be done to?
No, there are conditions relative to the time
To
that they
that
can construct.
separately from the
Yes,
traffic study?
Yes,
Okay,
as part of our decision.
okay,
Yep,
okay, I get it. Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Excuses.
I saw a couple other hands. Sir in the red hat. Let's start there.
Good evening. Spana Hazarika at 135 Plymouth Avenue, right next to Sharon. So I used to live at 145 Plymouth Avenue. We sold that house, moved 2 doors over. I am a realtor, but that's not my main source of income. I do care passionately about making sure people have access to home equity as an option to be able to grow their wealth, more from a personal stance than anything else. I've moved a lot in my life. I've been on couches, been through apartments, been through houses. So this is really important to me, that part of it. So I think my main thing I'd like to understand a little bit better, and I have informed an opinion of whether I'm for or against this project, is why it's not condo versus rental units. Other than that, I appreciate all the work that's been done to bring down the size of everything here. I fully echo everything that my neighbor is saying about the traffic in the area. I find it hard to believe that this is not going to make it a little bit worse. We have to take our son to daycare and come back through, and it's an absolute disaster every single morning trying to get through there. But I think my main thing I'd like to understand is what's going to happen with the traffic study. How does that play into the decisions that come into play here? and why there's not more options for home equity to be built for anyone that wants to move into this area. For context, going back to when we sold the other house, we specifically did not sell at the highest price at that house, just to make sure we did our part to keep home prices affordable in the area. We could have taken a much higher offer and taken the cash, but we wanted to make sure that people had an option to be able to buy in at a reasonable price and build home equity as well. So for me, that's going to be the most important thing, is to understand why that can't be done for other people, just because it is crazy on the street. It's a fantastic neighborhood. We're trying to host a block party in June. We applied for a permit there. And we'd definitely love to see more people in the neighborhood, but I would like to understand why that home equity option is not being made more available in the business plan there.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dana Smith. I live on President's Lane, so I don't live in the area, but I'm down there a lot, both on foot and whatnot. I got interested in this initially because of the Granite House, but because at first it looks like it was just going to be destroyed. Now that it's going to be moved, my understanding is, and I don't know how true this is, that they're going to only probably move one floor. But I think that's a different meeting and a different group. It's not going to be the whole house. And I'm not 100% sure about that, or if it's still a discussion. That was all. The main thing, just an anecdotal observation. And again, the place is not in my sight line or anything, but I am down there. Is that issue of the open space, the square foot ratio? There was something like 400 is the city, the rules, I guess, and then they're talking about like 151 square feet or something like that, so a fraction of the open space. So the whole thing's awfully tight. It's a little less concrete than traffic and everything, but it's just, again, kind of an observation, is that's an odd triangular shape. And I'm just wondering if people are going to want a little more space in that area as opposed to trying to get down to a rock field or anything. And that was all. It's already been brought up.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this application? I'll remind you, there are sign-in sheets. Anyone else? Councilor DeMaio. Didn't see any others.
James Devine, 117 Cross Street. Where do I start? One couple asked me to speak for them. They're opposed to it. They have trouble getting out of their driveway already because of traffic. Not related to this already because the traffic's there, we all know that. Jason and Rosanna Morris. I had another constituent ask me to check to see if there will be garage doors or a gate on the garages, so just to keep people from going in or out.
Garage door.
Yep, so I'd like to see that. And then I reached out and I had a community meeting, and then we had a traffic meeting because it was basically the hardest thing was the traffic, so we did have a good traffic meeting. There's all different people's thoughts on this. There's the people that just don't like it. They say it's too big. There's some people that don't like it just because of traffic. But there are also people, like the gentleman that already spoke, some other people I spoke to, they didn't want to come. They don't really come to meetings, but they asked me to express the fact that they do like development in the area. One guy is from Chicago, and the other one's just a local person. And then there was also some people that have reached out to me also that have a lot of respect for the McDonald family. They said that he's done the whole family's done a great job as a steward to bring community, different levels of eating, cafeteria style, takeaway, restaurants. I think we all know the area. So I wanted to make sure that those people had their voice heard too, that they respect McDonald's and they do like the project. So everybody's, it's hard to judge exactly where we're at, so that's it. I just wanted to repost what I heard from people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and, yep, there is one more, yep.
Sorry, this will be quick. I know that
A lot of people have gone. But my name is Ana Badaglino. I live at 165 Quincy Shore Drive. And I understand kind of gut reactions against large developments in Quincy. But I would say, from a young person's perspective, growing up in the Boston area and hoping someday to buy in Quincy, I do think there is a perspective in the community that if a project can't be made smaller without reducing affordability in the building, then making the project smaller isn't worth it. And I just want to make sure that perspective is heard from the community. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will just ask one last, oh, yeah?
Hi, my name is Catherine Clark, Robert Clark, 69 Willard Street. We have a business and a residence, mixed use, and we submitted the comments that you patiently read. I just want to say that our questions were answered. You know, the questions that we had as far as the McDonald's contributing the money for that traffic study, that's a big one for us because that hasn't been done yet. We very much appreciate that being done. As far as Allison Luff and Ed Grennan being very responsive, we have worked with them continually, sent them comments all about that whole intersection, and been very pleased with their response. There'll be the more in-depth things that will happen once this traffic study is done that will benefit all of us. And then they are working on other things that when the weather improves that will also help with that Quincy Willard Street Stedman intersection. And I couldn't be more pleased to hear about that building. Couldn't be more pleased to hear about that. That means a great deal. We're very immersed in the history of Quincy. Solomon Willard has been well educated over the years from the historians, and that means a great deal. So I appreciate those efforts, and we look forward to hearing about more of this over time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I'll do one last call. Okay, Attorney Fleming, would you like to, I don't know if you want to come up, address anything, or if you're content to sit, and that's certainly okay too. I just wanted to give you the opportunity.
We're thrilled with the comments from the community, and I think overall, I mean, I think that this is going to be a good fit within the community. I think the contribution towards the traffic solution is really going to be important for this community, addressing the traffic, addressing the safety issues, and without this contribution, really those traffic issues will remain unanswered. So we're really excited about being able to contribute towards that solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the board's pleasure at this point? Do we have enough information?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Stevens, I don't know, I think it would be helpful if you could touch on the traffic study that we discussed and.
Yeah, I'd be
some other
happy
points
to,
tonight.
and some of the other public comments. The traffic study, and that's a good report, Catherine, to hear about Allison and Eddie. I think they were out there the next week after the last planning board meeting, meeting directly with you, and then I think Councilor Devine also organized a meeting with some other abutters as well, attended by both. So to take a quick step back, what is a road safety audit? Road safety audit is sort of a study of existing conditions. You get the guys with the tripods out there, and they do the engineering. They shoot all the different engineering elements. They start looking at traffic history, traffic counts. They'll put down tubes. They'll take into account future or buildings under construction or future construction, even over political boundaries. We're well aware of what's going on in East Milton Square. And I also think they'll look at, driving patterns, where cars are going and coming from. So I do expect to look across the highway over into the Governor's Road area. I'd have to say those neighborhoods were there probably long before that interstate. So when that interstate went in, there are two, both sides are very, unique on-ramps and off-ramps. And I think it's time, to do this study. Once that study's done, and the applicant here has agreed to fund that, we then go towards like an alternatives analysis of all the intersections. we jump right into, starting to redesign. We'll ask questions, does it get fully signalized? We look at pedestrian accommodations and the whole element. And then there's a group, obviously tied with the planning department, there's a grants administrator group. We'll pursue MassWorks grants. There's grants that are tied to housing development. So we'll make an effort as a city to pursue those grants and also incorporate any future works into capital improvement requests. So I do feel the participation by TPAL and the engineering office is an indication that the city recognizes it's time to take a closer look at the whole area traffic patterns in this location. So that road safety audit, it's not going to give us the final answers. It's going to give us all the science, the engineering of what's out there today to then move forward with how to, address those issues. As to the flooding, I've been with the city for quite some time. I recognize, the March of 2010 floods. Those really wreaked havoc in this area. It flooded out a number of areas. Furnace Brook Parkway has gotten improvements. I think it's been mentioned in comments. Cunningham Brook runs close to this area as well. In 2019, the city had initiated a flood inundation modeling citywide. In the 2018 hazard mitigation plan, we broke up the city into 7 major watersheds. The flood inundation modeling, spearheaded by the city engineer's office, further broke down those watersheds into 220 micro watersheds. Now, in order to do that, they sent engineers out into the field with GPS monitors. We identify all the catch basins. We inventory all the pipes. So when Public Works comments on a new project, they have all of the existing information, the stormwater drainage system. They have elevations. There's modeling that can be performed. So they have that information when they're reviewing all projects at this point. I believe the city is mostly, it's been like a 5-year plan doing, pieces of the city at a time. But I think at this point, there's a pretty good understanding of a full flood inundation modeling that, the city engineer's office uses and has, it definitely impacts these projects for sure. There is also the talk of the stone house and the preservation of that and relocation of that. It was mentioned, it did come up. I pulled it up on my phone here for folks that are not familiar with it, but tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m., the city's Community Preservation Committee will be meeting. They meet at the school committee room located over at 34 Coddington Street. That's the old Quincy College building, and there is a request by the city for $919,000 for the relocation of the entire structure and rebuilt back up at the final spot that's decided. I'm assuming there's some other design and engineering elements to that request that will help inform that move. So that was definitely a big piece, I think, that the city heard coming out of the last meeting. So those are 3 updates. There was an Attorney Fleming. It is your letter submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeal. A lot of cases we see here in the Planning Board also require some form of dimensional relief. That is issued by a separate board, the Zoning Board of Appeal. When you look at the zoning code, the Mass General Law 40A, it does not direct a proponent, an applicant, or it does not direct a city review department on what board goes first. So we've sort of developed a system here that the planning department that looks at the entirety of the site, traffic, stormwater, that we would, it would be best for everybody to go forward. We also, this board also uses the benefit of independent engineering peer review. All of those documents for cases that are approved then become available to the zoning board and their members in the deliberation of specific variances being requested on specific projects. So I think in Mr. Fleming's letter, he does mention it is approved. It hasn't been approved. However, my thought is once you are in front of that board, the zoning board, providing the presentation that this board had already acted in some manner. And I believe that that's the way this letter came out.
And just to respond to that, I anticipated that this hearing would have to be held before the zoning board of appeals, and if this board needed to continue the matter to another date, I would do the same at the zoning board level as well.
The matter
No,
pending the planning board.
The zoning board hasn't acted on it until June 10th.
Okay, so you're scheduled to be on.
But it has been submitted.
Okay, very good. So that hopefully clarifies the gentleman that made that comment. Any questions for that?
No, thank you.
Okay.
That was very helpful.
All right.
And does the department have a recommendation?
Yes, we do. After consideration of the site plan accompanying documents, comments received from the city staff, peer review consultant, the department recommends the board approve site plan review under Quincy zoning ordinance Title 17, Section 9.5.1, site plan review, and special permit under Section 5.1.17, parking waivers, subject to the below listed special and general conditions. Special condition 1, the applicant shall obtain all applicable findings, variances, and special permits if needed from the Quincy Zoning Board of Appeal. 2, the applicant shall comply with the City of Quincy inclusionary zoning ordinance. Section 7, the applicant shall submit an inclusionary zoning ordinance application to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, a decision by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee shall be made on the subject property prior to the issuance of a temporary or final occupancy permit. 3, the applicant shall submit a construction management plan to be filed and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit. This shall include the locations of stockpile and/or staging areas for construction equipment and materials. The applicant shall also address construction period traffic impacts by providing a detailed sequence of construction and by addressing any space constraints and detailing how they'll be addressed as construction progresses. 4, the applicant shall reconstruct the sidewalk along the entire property frontage of Robertson Street, Quarry Street, and Willard Street with cement, concrete, broom finished with border and tool joints, and reset or replace granite curbing as specified by the Department of Public Works. Applicant shall provide ADA, AAB compliant sidewalks and wheelchair ramps at all crosswalks within the site with reciprocal ramps across Robertson Street, Quarry Street, and Willard Street. 5, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall provide a contribution of $30,000 to fund a comprehensive road safety audit to determine the short-term, mid-term, and long-term countermeasures to help mitigate the crash experience at project-adjacent intersections. 6, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall provide the planning department with appropriate documentation of the existing structure located at 92 Willard Street. The applicant shall work cooperatively with the city to relocate the existing granite house on the site. 7, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall obtain a drain permit from the Department of Public Works. 8, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall perform a water flow test with the city's water department. 9, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the existing sewer main and manholes shall be inspected with television pre-development in order to check the condition of the system. The proposed sewer service pipe and the connection to the main shall be inspected with television post-development. The television report shall be submitted to the Department of Public Works for assessment. 10, 1 week prior to any land disturbance activities, the applicant shall conduct an on-site inspection with the Department of Public Works or its designated representative to observe the erosion controls installed at the site and review the erosion controls to be employed during construction. 11, the Department of Public Works and/or the city's designated representative shall observe the construction of the stormwater management system at the following times: upon completion of excavation, upon completion of chamber and crushed stone, installation and prior to backfill. The applicant shall provide at least 72 hours notice for said inspections. 12, prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the applicant shall submit and record at the Norfolk County Register of Deeds an operation and maintenance plan for the project stormwater system, which shall include the following: stormwater management system owners, and I'll just make a brief clarification. If it stays apartments, it would be with the property management. If it turns into condos, there would be a condo association that would then take over the stormwater responsibilities. I'll continue the condition. Bullet 2, a plan showing snow storage areas and location of all stormwater BMPs, an operation and maintenance log for which includes all maintenance facilities and frequency of inspections. Inspections shall be conducted by a qualified professional, a professional such as a civil engineer or environmental engineer. Special condition 13, the applicant shall conduct a pre-demolition asbestos survey for any existing structures to be demolished. If there are any asbestos-containing materials present, they must be removed by a licensed contractor, and a post-abatement inspection must be performed by a DLI-certified project monitor. Walkthrough inspection conducted by the Quincy Health Department is required prior to demolition. 14, the applicant shall consult with the Quincy Health Department on noise mitigation measures for construction-related noise-generating activities to comply with local and state regulations. 15, the applicant shall submit a written rodent control plan to the Quincy Health Department for review and approval prior to any site activity. Said plan must be designed for the duration of the project and include at minimum the following: name and contact information of a licensed pest control operator to be retained by the project proponent for the duration of the project. Scope of the proposed plan for control of rodents, including number, location, and monitoring frequency of bait stations, as well as the anticipated length of service. 16, the applicant shall develop and submit a written dust control plan to the Quincy Health Department for review and approval prior to any site activity. Said dust control plan is to be implemented during any site activities to ensure compliance with the state air quality regulations. 17, the applicant shall comply with the City of Quincy tree ordinance. 18, the applicant shall submit an AutoCAD file for the project prior to the issuance of a building permit. File should be in Mass State Plane Coordinate System and preferably in Quincy standard data layers. 19, upon completion of the construction, the applicant shall submit a report included certified as-built plan from a professional engineer or surveyor certifying that the stormwater management system has been constructed in accordance with the approved plans. The report should include a certification that the excavation of the proposed systems were inspected prior to backfilling. The applicant shall also provide to the city engineer the digital file as-built plans showing all utilities, building footprints, reference bounds, and benchmarks defining the total site, facilities, and rights-of-way along with an AutoCAD file. The as-built plan shall be in a Mass State Plane Coordinate System. Plans should be stamped and signed by a professional land surveyor or engineer. 20, upon completion of the project, the applicant shall submit a stamped affidavit from the registered professional engineer that all utilities, water, sewer, and drain are constructed as designed and no illicit connections are found on the completed project site. That would complete the department's recommendation.
Okay. And is there a motion to approve consistent with the department's recommendation?
Make a motion that we approve with the special conditions on the project.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Member Kelly and Member Foley, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that's unanimous. Thank you.
very much for your time.
Thank you. Take 5 minutes?
Yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Let everybody flip. All right.
For our break, and the next item on the agenda is a public hearing, 211 C Street, Planning Board Case Number 2025-10. This public hearing shall be conducted to review the application of 211 to 215 C Street LLC, 80 Neponset Avenue, Boston, Mass. 02122, for site plan review under Quincy's zoning ordinance, Title 17, Section 9.5.1, site plan review, and 5.1.17 parking waiver. The applicant proposes the removal of the existing one-story commercial building and the construction of a new 3-story, 18-unit multifamily residential building with interior and exterior parking for a total of 41 spaces. The proposal will also include professionally designed drainage controls and landscaping. The property contains 28,273 square feet of land and is located at 211 C Street. The subject property is located within a Residence B zoning district and shown on Assessor's Map 1096G, Lot 15, Plot 15. Attorney Fleming.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Edward Fleming on behalf of Stephen Lee, who is the manager, 211 to 215 C Street LLC. And as you indicated, this is property at 211 C Street, best known as Grumpy White's, located on the corner of C and Murphy Memorial Drive, which is the otherwise known as the entrance to the Quincy Youth Hockey Rink. This is, I'm joined by Stephen tonight. I'm also joined by Alita Alba from Chu and Company, Michael Joyce from Joyce Consulting, the civil engineer, and Aaron Fredette from Bowman, who is our traffic engineer. 211 C Street, just for, everybody's pretty familiar with it, but 211 C Street is a 28,000 square foot parcel of land. As you know, it's improved by a single-story commercial restaurant building, formerly the home of Grumpy White's. Grumpy White's closed, I think, in 2000, and Stephen acquired the site in 2000. And since that time, Stephen has been working with the city officials in designing the plans for this particular proposal. Right now, the property is entirely building and paved parking lot. There's essentially no green space at all, and there's no drainage control measures. The water just sheets off the site towards the back of the site and the marshland, and the topography is much higher in the front than it is in the back. And Michael will talk about the drainage and how he'll be addressing the drainage for this proposal. As I indicated, Stephen bought this site about 4 years ago. If there's one word for Stephen, and there's actually two words for Stephen, but there's one word for Stephen, he's patient. From the very beginning of this project, Stephen's worked with the city, worked with the neighbors, worked with the church next door, taken in all of the information from all of those different parties to come up with a plan that made sense and worked at the site. And he's made changes to the plans over the course of these 4 years. When we first were ready to file, probably 3 years ago, the project that you're familiar with that took place at the a Chinese restaurant right down the street was in the process of being heard by the board. And we were told asked by Councilor McCarthy if we could hold off. So Stephen, because he's a very patient guy, agreed to do so and be patient and wait his turn. At that time, Stephen had his folks design a 24-unit residential building that was 4 stories in height. And after that, those meetings that took place on that Chinese restaurant, Mr. McCarthy, Councilor McCarthy, came back to us and asked Stephen if he would consider making some reductions to the size of the plan, not only in the number of units, but also in the total height of the building. So the plan was revised, and again, he was patient and cooperative during that time. The project was then reduced from 24 units to 18 units. It was reduced in height from 4 stories to 3 stories. Councilor McCarthy also spoke with Stephen again after ththose changes were made if he would look at redesigning the character of the building. It provided for a flat roof in a more box style, more modern flat roof setting. And he asked him if he could change the character of the building to fit a little bit more with the neighborhood. And Lita will talk about the changes or the new design that was completed. And all along, Stephen maintained the number of parking spaces because everything he heard from both the councilor and from the neighbors was a concern about parking. Parking because there's really no parking on C Street, and the neighbors across in Marymount really didn't want to see cars coming across the street parking in their neighborhoods either. So Stephen maintained a parking level despite the changes in the number of units. He maintained the parking level that we'll talk about today. The other thing that he was patient about is that while he was preparing this, the city decided to make a lot of changes on C Street. And as you may know, the city's redoing the entire C Street. And one of the changes really benefits this particular proposal is that there's a new traffic light at the intersection of C and Murphy Memorial Drive. I remember numerous times trying to come in and out of that hockey rink and taking my life in my hands, like many people here. And it was a very, very difficult place to get in and out of. So that new light at that location is going to be fantastic. And what it allowed is Stephen and his team to redesign the way in which traffic could come in and out of our site, utilizing that new light. And Erin will talk about that in a little bit more detail. So the proposal that we're here before you tonight is the new redesigned proposal. Oh, and by the way, during that time as well, Councilor McCarthy asked that we attend not one, but 2 different neighborhood meetings. One before the end of the year, and then a second one after the end of the year. Both of those meetings are actually very well attended. I know there's a gentleman here tonight who was at the meeting, and he can attest to the fact that there were a number of neighbors that were here. And a lot of concerns were raised. Some folks didn't like the idea of development at all on the site. Some missed the idea of a restaurant on the site. Stephen told them that one of the things that he did while he was awaiting this development is he entertained interest in the site from potential restaurateurs. What happened was those restaurateurs just didn't feel like the site was well suited for a restaurant and decided to move on. So he entertained those, but that never came to fruition. So he's continued to move forward with this. They also asked that we make changes to the building. One of the things that we did was we eliminated balconies on the side that faced some of the neighbors across Murphy Memorial Drive so that they wouldn't have people standing on a balcony overlooking their yards to provide them with a level of privacy. We made those architectural character changes to the building. We reduced the number of units and things of that nature. Nice people, nice legitimate concerns, and we believe that we've addressed them. As you indicated, the relief that we're seeking tonight is site plan review. And I also requested a special permit parking waiver, not because we're asking for parking from the number of spaces, because we actually have more than what's required, only parking setback relief, because the site actually narrows in, and the way the building is situated, you'll see on the site plan, some of the spaces in the rear of the site are a little less than 10 feet off the property line, but very minimal relief from the parking setback. So, having said that, why don't I have, how do we do the plans? We have architectural, so you could, yeah, Alida, you can go through the architectural.
Hi, Elida Alba with Chu & Company Architects in Quincy. This project consists of a 3-story residential building, including 18 units and 41 parking spaces. So on this page, we have just context photos of the area. This is a site layout of the building. As you can see, the main entrance faces C Street. We have 23 parking spaces on the right side of the building next to the church, and 18 parking spaces down in the basement. So this is the basement floor plan. The garage door is located at the back of the property, and there's 18 spaces, which allows for one parking space per unit in the garage. There's also a trash and recycling area in the basement. First floor, the main entrance is located on C Street. There are 6 units per floor, and all the 3 floors are identical. All of the units are 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units. And the square footage varies from 991 square feet to 1,245 square feet. Second floor and third floor are identical, again 6 units per floor. There is an elevator which services all 3 floors. This is the facade, the elevation facing C Street. Very traditional design with fiber cement clapboard siding, double hang windows, base, and a gable roof. This is the right side elevation. Originally, we had balconies on this side. The neighbors were concerned about balconies. overlooking their yard, so we had to remove those balconies on this side to satisfy their concern. This is the other side. This side is facing the church. And then this is the back of the building, garage door for accessing the parking in the basement, and the 3 residential floors above that. This is the landscape plan. This plan was prepared by a professional landscape architect. Site plan. I'll turn it over to Michael to cover the site plan.
Just really quickly on the landscape plan, back this way. On this landscape plan, another thing that was done at the request of the neighbors, as you can see, a very dense landscape planting along the Murphy Memorial Drive to provide that landscape buffer for the neighbors. Again, removing those balconies and also adding that landscaping buffer. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of new green space. As I said to you before, this site is entirely pavement and building now. We're adding a significant amount of new landscaping on the site. And by the way, the final parking numbers are actually 2.275 spaces, 27 spaces per unit. The ordinance requires in Residence B, where this is located. So even though this was a business, it was a non-conforming use in that location. So this is actually a more conforming use, and so we're kind of satisfying, that use requirement in this particular location.
Hello, Michael Joyce with Joyce Consulting Group, civil engineers in the project, 439 Washington Street in Braintree. So let's run down the existing conditions real quick. We have C Street to the north of the site, Murphy Memorial Drive to the west. To the east is the Catholic Church, and then to the south is City of Quincy land that goes down to the marshland in the rear. The marshland is well beyond the site, so it's not within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. You have the existing Grumpy White's building in the center of the lot, and then the majority of the lot is paved with parking surrounding the area. This is a standard demolition plan, shows basically the entirety of the site will be removed. The sidewalks will be replaced. Just have to coordinate that. They may not be replaced. This was before the DOT started their work, so we'll coordinate that with the City of Quincy DPW. So this is the proposed site plan. Access from C Street is entrance only. It's 16 feet wide. The idea is that traffic will come in from C Street, can park at the upper lot, or if they'd like, they enter the garage at the lower level in the rear. All traffic exiting the site is intended to go up Murphy Memorial Drive and exit onto C Street at that new signalized intersection. There are, I believe it's 41 total spaces, 23 on the lot and 18 in the garage. And the garage will also have the ADA compliant parking, so that they have the elevators accessible to them. There'll also be ADA accessibility from the front walkway as well. Let's just see here. So the proposed lot, or the existing lot, kind of grades from front to back. So it all grades down Murphy Memorial Drive. Currently, there are no stormwater structures on site. So all the stormwater sheet flows from the site to the City of Quincy property in the rear. The overall project will reduce the impervious area by about 3,750 square feet. So that is an improvement in stormwater runoff just from that alone. But we're also proposing 20 units of Caltech stormwater infiltration at the rear of the site. Stormwater will be collected by a couple of catch basins, and the rooftop runoff will be collected by roof leaders. It'll all be directed to that stormwater infiltration system, and it'll ultimately overflow into a drain that runs in Murphy Memorial Drive, which outlets to the marsh area in the rear. There'll be a reduction in stormwater runoff in the 210, 25, and 100-year storms in accordance with the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook. There'll be all new proposed utilities, electric, sewer, water, drain. I think that's about it for me. Aaron, did you want to speak? This is Aaron Fredette from McMahon, traffic engineer.
Thank you. For the record, Erin Fredette, now Bowman Consulting, previously McMahon Associates. So we did conduct a traffic assessment and in accordance with city guidelines and have been working with the city traffic engineer, particularly as it relates to the coordination with the C Street improvements and making sure all those things are well aligned. As part of the assessment, we collected existing volumes and conducted trip generation using the Institute of Transportation Engineers for multifamily housing. Based on the proposed 18 units, that results in approximately 10 total trips during a peak hour. So that's 10 total entering and exiting. When you compare that to the volume that's on C Street, that's less than a 1% increase to traffic. So really looking at a very small increase in traffic related to this project. Even though that increase is small, as Ed mentioned earlier, the installation of the signal at Murphy Memorial is expected to even further reduce that minimal impact. And not only is it a new signal, but I believe based on the plans, it's intended to be an adaptive signal, which is they're great because they can be more responsive in real time to changes in traffic flow. So when the hockey rink lets out, it can be more reactive to that flow and manage traffic a little bit better. It's also going to be coordinated with the other intersections along C Street, including Quincy Shore Drive. So that should really take care of any, if there were going to be any impact, it would take care of any of that. So I think with that, turn it back over to you. Yeah, okay, great.
So that's the applicant's presentation.
Thank you. Let me see if anybody has questions.
So, just a couple. Looking at the project, I think it's a nice looking project. I drive by the site 2-3 times a day. I think you're gonna really benefit with that traffic light there. That whole area has come out really nice. It looks nice. I know a lot of people didn't like the China Star project. It's actually coming out pretty nice. I think it looks pretty nice there too. I think it's a nice looking project. I do have a question though. I just was curious, what parking spots is Blacks Creek Barbecue gonna get? They get in the front two up near the C Street, or they go in the back of the lot? No, but no, I think it's gonna be a nice project. It's gonna finally clean up the area. I mean, the whole area is a mess right now with C Street and everything, but once it's all done, I think it's gonna be a nice addition to the area. So I think it's a nice looking project.
Other comments, questions? Yes.
Just a comment. I think it's great that you remove the balconies on that one side, the neighbor's request. But I'd be willing to bet, particularly on those units in the rear, that you've got a view out that back that's going right across Broad Meadows, Town River, and Fall River beyond. That's a pretty spectacular view, I would be willing to bet, from probably the second floor, definitely the third. That's something that really should be taken advantage of. I know it was great, the neighbors wanted the balconies to disappear on that side, but I don't know if you ever considered a communal rooftop deck or anything, but that's a rare view that you're gonna have at the back of that. That's a shame, it's a shame, but that's my comment, thank you.
Thanks. I'll ask just a few questions. Just site lighting along, I guess, the back side of the parking spaces, which seems to be a little away from the building. I didn't know if there was any bollards or anything like that.
We haven't discussed it. Are there any wall packs there, or is it?
I think we're limiting the lighting to building lighting, but there may have to be, we may have to do a little bit more of an analysis, certainly in the back corner of the site, to ensure that those spaces are gonna be appropriately illuminated. So we'll have more, we'll provide the board with more information on that.
Okay. And then just a question, because it's come up a few times tonight, condominium, apartment, to be decided. Not that, just curious.
Apartments.
Okay, I'm just curious. Okay. That was all I had.
Thank you.
So we'll open it to public comment. This is a public hearing. You can sign in on the sign-in sheet, or if anyone's here interested in speaking on this application, please just raise your hand. Sir, beat you to the punch.
James Dunn, 167 Babcock Street, Quincy. And you can't dine and you can't dance at Al's Dine and Dance anymore, okay? Unfortunately, like Ed said, Stevie and his dad are patient people. They've listened to the community. I've worked with them with the respect to the church next door. And Stevie has told me anything that the church needs. I know they're gonna be losing some overflow parking that they used to use, Grumpy's. We've created some more parking spaces for the church, but you couldn't ask for a better partner in the city than Mr. Lee, Stevie, and his dad. And like I said, he's been sitting on this property for 3-4 years now, Steve? 4 years, okay? Paying the taxes to the city of Quincy. He has looked for the alternatives to, people talked about restaurants. As a matter of fact, I spoke before this board and I said, let's face it, the Fox and Hounds is closed 2 days a week now. The money just isn't out there right now, and to support a property like that for a restaurant, it's not there anymore. The nightlife has moved to Quincy Center and so long. The $9.95 steak tips and haddock sandwich is now $29.95, okay, it's gone. So Stevie listens to the concerns of the people through his lawyer, his great lawyer that he has. And I think it'd be a good partner for the city of Quincy. Thank you for your time, board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, did you raise your hand earlier? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Robert Keddy, K-E-D-D-Y. I live at 121 Narragansett Road, which is across the street from Grumpy's. I remember Al's Dine and Dance. I've been living where I'm living since 1967. My main concerns, I'm sure the buyer of Grumpy's, when he bought it, he checked into what he could do with the property. It's Residence B. I believe in Residence B, the maximum number of units can be 9 units. They wanted to put 24, and they want us to believe they were being generous to the city by coming down to 18, which is twice as many as in Residence B you're allowed. My main concern is that the residential property owners, the single-family property owners like myself, we are going to suffer from a valuation point of view, economic and functional obsolescence, which will bring the value of our personal residence down because of this property. So as a resident, as a member of the city of Quincy, I hope you'll take that into consideration and maybe break it down to 9 units, which Residence B zoning allows. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present wishing to speak on this application? Okay, so this is the first public hearing. I think that there is more time needed for the
Yeah,
city's review.
but not as much time as we typically need. One thing I want to commend the applicant, he's been into the office, I believe, twice to review, what's expected, providing plans, getting feedback from the city. You heard there's the MassDOT project. He's been directly involved with TPAL. In fact, one of the TPAL comments that came out was they do want all the traffic to exit through the new Murphy Memorial Drive. So it's just inbound off of C Street. So you can't pull out and go right or left on that C Street curb cut. So I do commend that. The application was in early. It did not make the May meeting. I believe the peer review report has already been received by the department. Ed, is your team willing to, or able to get responses back, including some lighting plan?
Absolutely.
In time, for the June meeting, at least a week in advance, if not sooner? So the department feels comfortable recommending a continuance 1 month to June 25th.
Is there a motion to second?
June
I'll
25th.
move to continue this case to the June 25th.
Second it.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, thank you. All right.
Now Mr. Mahoney can come on.
Finally.
Yes. Do you want me to sit here, or do you want me to go there?
Oh, you're presenting this one?
Maybe.
Make it official.
Same,
Don't forget to state your name. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Lee, good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You
Thank
too,
you.
thanks.
Okay, so we have the next item, it's a public hearing, City Council Order 2025-058, Special Districts, expanding the North Quincy Transit-Oriented District and adding a Crown Colony Transit-Oriented District. This public hearing shall be conducted to review City Council Order 2025-058 that proposes to amend the Quincy zoning ordinance, Title 17, Chapter 375, Section 8, Special Districts, subsection 8.5, Transit-Oriented Districts. Under this order, Title 17, Chapter 375 zoning would be amended as follows. First, by adding at the end of 8.5.1.3 the following, quote, as expanded by adding the additional land depicted together with the foregoing land on a plan of land prepared by Bowler Engineering dated April 29, 2025 until North Quincy Transit-Oriented District and on file with Quincy City Clerk and another tract of land to be known as the Crown Colony Transit-Oriented District and consisting of all of the land depicted as Crown Colony Transit-Oriented District on a plan of land prepared by Bowler Engineering dated April 28, 2025 until plan of Crown Colony Transit-Oriented District and on file with Quincy City Clerk. And second, by modifying section 8.5.7 and section 10.0 definitions. And we have Mr. Stevens.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair. Rob Stevens, Deputy Planning Director here for the City of Quincy, here to make a few remarks about the proposed zoning. First off, the Planning Board is hardwired to review and provide a report to the City Council, the legislative body that oversees the zoning code. So an amendment was submitted for TOD zoning districts. It's a TOD district we've already had in place for some time. So this is an amendment to expand existing geographic areas that fall under this overlay district. And I put together a few slides to walk you through this. What's interesting is it's a little bit of a memory lane or a little bit of history lesson. And it's fascinating to see, major pieces of infrastructure and how they've been developed in the city, and then what happens afterwards. And in this case, we're looking at an interstate system, and we're looking at the subway line. For those of you that don't know, when the Southeast Expressway opened in the 1950s, passenger rail service ended. It took, the city elders at the time, the elders to be now, several years, over 10 years, to work with the state to get that red line extended. And it finally happened in the early 1970s. But the way it happened is we got the JFK station, then we've got North Quincy, Wollaston, and then Quincy Center was the end. So that was in the early 1970s. One of the districts I'm going to speak to is the North Quincy district. After that expansion in the early 70s, the city as well as the town of Braintree kept pushing for a red line service. the Braintree station opened next in the late 70s. And then after that station, that came back up the line and it got the development of the Quincy Adams station in the early 1980s. So with that sort of preface, I, in the planning department, have, I found a slide deck from the late 1970s that did some aerial views. And here we go with the North Quincy area. Again, if you recall, I mentioned North Quincy, Wollaston, and Quincy Center happened first. So this area, the State Street complex, the major buildings built, but not the whole road, right? You see the road just comes in a little bit at the edge. The train station is brand new. For the most part, and all that surface parking you see, sort of dead center in the image. And then we've got some black asphalt. That was additional land owned by the T that is in a parking area. And you'll see that when you see the zoning district in a few more slides. The original zoning district focused on that right side. And what we see today is the development spearheaded by the Bizzuto team that includes 600 residential units. It includes over 50,000 square foot of retail. It is the target store location. It also has, and you can see from this view, a parking garage that supports both the commuters as well as the residents. We see the full development of the State Street South complex, which is interesting. You even see the one Neponset right at the bridge. If you look back before, I believe that was an old flea market up there in the top left in that image. Pretty fascinating. Then we jump to Crown Colony, and that was a gravel pit. Look, there's no off-ramps for folks that don't know. The main highway access for Quincy Center used to be out Quarry Street to the Furnace Brook Parkway on-ramps, which is that circle rotary up at the top of the screen on the interstate system. Bottom right is the Raytheon plant that would later become the Center Street Home Depot. So that's sort of a point of reference. That sort of line running up from that is about where Center Street lays out today. It looks like around Intervale Street is where the gravel pit, loaded and unloaded onto local roads from that use. Let's see here. So here's sort of a similar view. You see the full spread of Crown Colony developed. There's two development sites up sort of towards the top of the image, right at the triangle, is an undeveloped site that remains today. There's also one down near the parking garage next to the Marriott as well, but really neat. So some other background, the gravel pit, the highway came in, the gravel pit, wasn't a productive business at that location. Here's one of the brochures, as with the development concept of Crown Colony. It's fascinating. It's right at the intersection of Route 3, Route 28, 128, Route 93. The Social Plaza, I don't think the Sheraton Tara Hotel is there anymore, which is neat. And then they even had sort of this, they built a model and did a layout of how Crown Colony was to be developed. What's interesting, when it was a gravel pit and that it was permitted as a large community, when the elevation apartments that I was part of the review team occurred a number of years ago, I discovered that the engineering, all the stormwater and drainage, it was over capacity. So, I'm hopeful as we look to the future of this area that the infrastructure, the bones is all great and, it should be easy sailing from an engineering point of view as we move forward. This one is a little bit earlier. It's still the gravel pit. But now you see the Quincy Adams stations built. You still have the old Raytheon plant. It hadn't been converted to a Home Depot. Home Depot came in about 1998. You see that very first building with that black asphalt. That was a Patriot Ledger printing press, which that in itself has already flipped to the BJ's retail store. And again, you see the beginnings of the Crown Colony, and then that first right, the Congress Street We got the off-ramps to provide Bergen Parkway, that was also constructed, as well as the Army Corps' Town Brook Flood Control Project. That, came through with this roadway and the development of Crown Colony. So a little bit of a timeline here. It's zoned industrial because of the, the historical, granite, granite gravel quarrying that was occurring. They filed the subdivision plan in 1984, and that launched the first 9 projects, which was the first few that you go in on Crown Colony and Congress Street. It seems like there was a second wave, 99 to 2000, that included the Marriott Hotel and a few other of the buildings we see there today. But the district or the area became sort of overrun with cars and traffic. It was a concern by the city. Mr. Flatley, the late Mr. Flatley, realized that, and through a lot of expense of his own, donating land and funding a traffic study, all the way in 2009, he convinced the state, Mass DOT, to construct or to fund $18 million to build the Crown Colony on-ramp and off-ramp system that we see today. That ramp system has relieved a lot of the traffic that the offices used to have, that 9 to 5 office schedule. And I make a little point of emphasis on that because since 2009, we've seen 2 projects constructed in the park. One, as I mentioned, was the BJ's. And then the second project was
The apartments.
the apartments, the elevation apartments, exactly. So with the underlining zoning of being industrial that prohibits residential use today, we've recognized the office park in the 80s was conceived as just an office park. I believe a lot of those buildings had cafeterias, so you didn't get this demand for restaurants or other space that the workers, may want. They were sort of self-contained units. There was a big deal made of the daycare center, that everyone could drop their kids off and then scurry to the buildings, do their 8-hour shifts, and that was the 1980s. But these 2 projects, and then the 3 projects adjacent would be the Lowe's Home Improvement Center, which has since been acquired by the MBTA for the bus maintenance facility. That was a retail proposal. We have the Deco Apartments, which is residential, and then the storage facility over behind the Quincy Adams. So that has been sort of the history of this Crown Colony area. And if I shift back to the TOD zoning, in 2016, I think we saw the pressures up at the North Quincy site. Again, it's 5 to 10 years. It was started to redevelop 5 to 10 years sooner than Crown Colony. So the 3, a lot of the buildings there are now over 40 years old on sort of west of the tracks. But in 2016, the station itself needed improvement and there was interest there. The MBTA issued an RFP for development. So once the city saw that, we recognized we needed to come forward with some tools to manage that development. So in 2016, we were already 6 years into urban renewal in Quincy Center and using a certificate of consistency review process by this body, by the planning board, which mimics site plan and special permit granting authority. But what it does is it points, in urban renewal plans, the consistency pointed to the urban renewal plan. That sort of review process is mimicked in the city's 2016 zoning ordinance, where it asks this body to issue a certificate of consistency with the standards laid out into the zoning ordinance, which speaks to mixed-use development. It identifies the planning board as a special permit granting authority. It also wraps in, whether you know it or not, floodplain review, which is typically done by zoning board. So we try to expedite or build a comprehensive permit, application process that's predictable for developers. But they, again, run it through this body that has the support of the department, who we have the support of the peer review to provide to the members here as projects come forward. The lot size minimum is 1 acre, height is 8 stories. This is all that was put into place for the North Quincy Station and the adoption of TOD design guidelines, which picks up the themes without being very specific in zoning. It feels like when you get very specific on zoning, there's no perfect project that fits everything, and it removes flexibility to allow the market to, come in and recommend, good development. So that was put in place. We did get the Bizzuto development project, and that's more or less up and running at this time, which is pretty exciting there. In 2022, there was an amendment done down to Center Street, which is off the Quincy Adams station area. So that was adopted down there, and so we can kind of jump to what those districts look like at the time. On the left was the North Quincy station area, and that long, piece to the bottom left was that parking lot across the tracks owned by the MBTA. The Center Street one is the one to the right. We centered on Center Street. There is some old industrial buildings in there. Again, highest and best use, a few minutes from the highways, probably not salvage yards, junkyards, those types of things. The city also had a brownfield property in that area that had taken by tax title that needed, I think, some help to unlock some opportunities there. So that brownfield could be addressed. And today we have those apartments being constructed by the Avalon Communities, which is pretty exciting. So what this zoning amendment does is it does propose to come across the tracks and pick up the three properties, three existing office buildings on Newport Ave. I made mention of it already, but all three of them are over 40 years old. So it's time for them to sort of reinvent themselves. Whether those buildings stay or whether they get demolished, we're not sure, but we think providing flexibility to the development community by bringing in this overlay district over to this side of the tracks is a good way to promote reinvestment in these areas and gives the flexibility to meet current demands. We know since COVID, office work it's just different now. And there's a lot more amenities I think office workers are looking for. They want to be part of a community. I don't think folks like being exiled out to office parks. That could be pretty desolate. I know I visit Crown Colony a lot, and you see a lot of folks walking on the sidewalk that work through there and throughout that complex. And I think it could be enhanced, and look forward to that opportunity. Same here with North Quincy. You got the actual T station. The guidelines too help us speak to making sure the public has access, and they're not blocked to access to get into the T, and they can share in some of the benefit of the public realm improvements that are contemplated in today's types of development. The TOD district expansion down at Crown Colony, it's more or less the entirety of the office park. I think I counted up to 16 properties there. I mentioned they came in two phases. One soon after the roadway was built in the mid-'80s. So those buildings are over 30 years old at this point. The next wave was sort of the late 90s. Those buildings are starting to get up there in age as well. So those are the two, essentially what the two proposals were. There were some adjustments to the prohibited uses prohibited or what's allowed as TOD uses, but more or less this is just an expansion of an existing TOD zoning overlay district to just expand that geographic area. One issue I picked up on the map is we have the existing Center Street district, and it's called Center Street, and this amendment proposes one in Crown Colony that's called Crown Colony. They share a boundary. So right here, looking for a little clarification, and I think the City Council would be more than able to handle that, on whether these were supposed to be two different districts. I don't know if there's a marketing thought behind that, or if they're combined, and I suggest if they are combined, maybe we call that the Adams Station TOD district. And also, I would recommend approval on that. I'd mention one final note. We focus a lot on the spine, the rail corridor. Using the two TOD overlay districts for North Quincy and Quincy Adams, we believe is appropriate. We believe the market there can manage new growth. I would point out the city does have 2 other train stations, one at Wollaston and Quincy Center. And as the board knows, zoning wasn't enough to support development in those 2 districts. And the city has gone forward and adopted 2 urban renewal plans for those 2 station areas. So that's, the key to our, development strategy here along, the TOD strategy. We have 4 stations. We've got the enhanced zoning overlay for North Quincy and Quincy Adams. And then we're using, the additional development tools through urban renewal 121B for the Wollaston station and the Quincy station area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So up on the Crown Colony area, that entire property, the largest landowner is still the Flatley companies up there, or how?
It's my understanding that we still, John Flatley Jr. was the proponent for the elevation apartments, and I believe he manages he has his own portfolio. There is still, I believe, a Flatley group that manages some of the existing office areas up there. That group also, this is Private Ways, that group also deals with roadway work. And that's like a condominium association up here for all the tenants that pay in for landscaping and maintenance and those types of things. So there are 2 groups. I'm assuming there's some connection with John Flatley Jr., but he's a primary owner. The buildings along Congress Street, the medical buildings, I believe those are more condoed buildings. There's 3 or 4 sort of, right there on Congress Street.
300,
yeah, so,
500 Congress.
Yep.
Does the city own any property up there anymore?
No.
No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one point of clarification. This does not have to do, this is something separate from the MBTA Communities Act that we have previously.
That is correct. This pre-existed before the MBTA's Act. This one has some more flexibility as far as uses. The MBTA communities, although it allows mixed use, was really trying to drive on residential, multifamily residential. That was the push. It also had a factor of by right development, meaning you had to have something that fit perfectly and it wouldn't even need approval. It could just go file a building permit. We feel working with the developers, having the city contribute, private and public financing and funding is what's needed to improve areas. That played out in a case earlier today where you heard private developers going to fund a road safety audit, of which the city can then utilize and put together what's necessary for funding to manage, public infrastructure improvements to the roadway system. So we do have these districts here. Like I had said at Crown Colony, when they laid it out in the 80s, they oversized all the engineering, and I found that out with the elevation apartments. So that is just good to know because I wasn't here at the time.
We're glad you're here now.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, are we looking for a motion?
Well, it's a public hearing, so we have
Okay.
to open
Yep.
it
To the public.
to public comment. In
Yes.
case anybody would like to speak on this.
Yeah. So any more questions for me, or we could give way to the public comment?
Okay, all right.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Stevens. So this is a public hearing. People can sign in if they're interested in signing in. I don't know if anybody here wants to speak on this application. Okay, Councilor Devine.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
James Devine, 117 Cross Street. Yeah, very exciting stuff. When I campaigned, there's a small area up there with some condos. And it's pretty barren up there now, especially after COVID. So I have major concerns about the valuation of the commercial property going down, which means that we would have a bigger burden of residential tax. So this is great. So I think it's very important because there's buildings up there that are not being utilized. I can already see basically Derby Street on steroids, maybe something like that. I think it'd be a great fit. I know it's not going to be Marina Bay. There's no water there, but it's we need to do something up there to make sure that we can keep our commercial value at a proper level, because if not, we're gonna lose money, and it's gonna be a burden on the residents of Quincy, so, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this application? Okay. All right, so I think we can move to close.
I'll move to close public hearing.
Okay.
Second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And then Member Kelly, were you interested in making
Yeah,
a
I would
motion?
Make a motion that we recommend to the city council to adopt the overlay district.
Okay. And then, and also we'll just include the department's other recommendation regarding the map as well. Okay, so there's a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, ooh.
Jump right in.
I know, we'll give it, maybe that's our, well, we've got all 5 of us, so I think Member Liu's.
Oh, you don't need me.
Yeah. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So that's unanimous. And then there was just one additional item tonight. Business meeting, request for extension of 2-year time limit on permit approval for 46 to 50 Winter Street, planning board case number 2023-02. Mr. Stevens.
Hi, Madam Chair, through you, Rob Stevens, Deputy Planning Director. Yes, that project is one of the projects this board has approved. I believe it expires over the summer in July. The 2 years limit runs out. Just for your edification, planning board approval is good for 2 years. You guys have the ability to extend that life, but only in 6-month increments. So this project was, the proponent for it was NeighborWorks Housing, one of the city's nonprofit housing partners. And when I first started with the city, worked with a lot of this, the nonprofit housing, they have to layer in a number of different state and federal and local subsidies. In talking with that team, they're continuing to layer that up, and as an abundance of caution, they have requested some additional time. I fully recommend, that extension, and it's supported by the department.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, and that, yes. Oh,
Move to adjourn.
yes.
Second it. Aye.
Different. Yeah. I'm so used to hanging out over there.
I know, right?